It is 3 in the morning. The room is still, bathed in the blue-grey light of a world that is not yet awake. But your mind is a marketplace of noise, a silent storm of thoughts. An email from work that felt vaguely threatening, a conversation with a loved one that ended on a sour note, the persistent, low hum of financial pressure, and that deeper, formless anxiety about the future, about whether you are on the right path at all. This experience, this quiet prison of the sleepless mind, is a place that so many of us know intimately. We lie there, waiting for a peace that never seems to arrive, held captive by a mind that will not grant us rest. If this sounds familiar, know that this state is not a personal failure. It is a shared symptom of our age. We live in a world of constant noise, both outside of us, through the endless notifications, the 24-hour news cycle, and the curated perfection of social media, and inside of us, through the relentless drive of our own ambitions, our sharp-edged self-criticism, and our ever-present anxieties. We have been taught, from a young age, how to strive, how to acquire, how to achieve, and how to build. But no one ever teaches us how to release, how to rest, how to simply be. This profound imbalance comes with a price paid in emotional exhaustion, in a sense of being perpetually overwhelmed, and in long, sleepless nights where we wrestle with the ghosts of yesterday and the fears of tomorrow. But there is another way. There exists a timeless wisdom, an ancient and profound science of the mind that has for thousands of years addressed this very specific kind of human suffering. It is not a religion that demands blind faith, but rather a path of discovery, an invitation to look inward. This is the wisdom of Zen Buddhism, a tradition that invites us not to run from life, but to understand it more deeply, to touch its essence. It suggests that the solution to the storm in our mind is not to fight it with more force, but to find a quiet, unshakable center within. It begins with a simple, yet radical act, learning to watch the mind itself, and from that watching, learning the gentle, liberating art of letting go, not giving up, but letting go of the desperate grip on that which no longer serves us, so that we can finally, truly, come home to ourselves and find the deep, healing rest we so desperately seek. To begin our journey, we must first dare to look directly at the nature of our restlessness, to give it a name. In the ancient language of the Buddha, this fundamental human experience is called dukkha. This word is often translated into English simply as suffering, but this translation is incomplete. It is too harsh, too absolute. It can conjure images of only the most dramatic forms of pain, and in doing so, we might mistakenly believe it doesn't apply to us, especially when our lives are, on the surface, quite comfortable. But dukkha is far more subtle, more pervasive, and more intimately familiar to us than we might think. A better translation might be unsatisfactoriness, or a pervasive sense of unease. Imagine a beautifully crafted wooden wheel, perfect in every way, except for one small detail. The hole for the axle is drilled just slightly off-center. As the wheel turns, it will never find a smooth, effortless rhythm. There will always be a subtle bump, a persistent, low-grade vibration, a wobble. This wobble, this fundamental lack of perfect ease in the turning of our lives, is dukkha. It is the low-grade fever of the spirit, the background static beneath the music of our daily experience, the feeling that no matter how much we achieve or acquire, something is still not quite right. It is crucial to understand that naming this, acknowledging dukkha, is not an act of pessimism. It is the opposite. It is an act of profound realism and courage. If you go to a doctor with a persistent ailment, the first thing the doctor must do is make an accurate diagnosis. You would not accuse the doctor of being negative for identifying the illness. Instead, you would feel a sense of relief. Finally, the problem has been seen, it has been named, and now a course of treatment can begin. In the same way, the teaching of dukkha is not a bleak declaration that life is misery. It is the compassionate, clear-eyed diagnosis of the human condition, offered as the essential first step toward healing. It is the foundation of empowerment, for we cannot solve a problem that we refuse to acknowledge. To look at dukkha is to finally turn on the lights in a room we have been stumbling through in the dark. This pervasive unsatisfactoriness shows up in our lives in three distinct, though often overlapping, ways. The first is the most obvious, the dukkha of painful experiences. This is the raw, undeniable pain of a migraine headache, the sharp grief of losing someone you love, the sting of rejection, the anxiety of a financial crisis. It is the suffering of stubbing your toe, of feeling sick, of experiencing failure. This form of dukkha needs little explanation, as it is a direct and unavoidable part of having a human body and a human heart in an unpredictable world. It is the plain and simple fact that life sometimes hurts, and there is no escaping this truth. The second form is more subtle and perhaps more insidious. It is the dukkha of change. This is the suffering that arises from the fact that even pleasant experiences are temporary. Think of a perfect summer day, a moment of pure joy with friends, the elation of achieving a long sought-after goal, or the bliss of falling in love. Even in the midst of this happiness, a subtle undertone of anxiety often exists, a quiet fear that this moment will end. And because all things are impermanent, it inevitably does. The vacation is over. The feeling of success fades and becomes the new normal. The passionate intensity of a new romance settles into something more familiar. This is the suffering of attachment to pleasure. We cling to happy moments, trying to freeze them in time, and when they slip through our fingers, as they always must, we feel a sense of loss and disappointment. It is the bittersweet ache of knowing that the beautiful sunset must fade to darkness. This form of dukkha reveals a profound truth. Our suffering comes not from the changing nature of life, but from our resistance to it, our demand that it be permanent when its very nature is to flow. The third form is the deepest and most fundamental. It is called the dukkha of conditioned existence. This is the ever-present background hum of unsatisfactoriness that is woven into the very fabric of our lives, simply because we exist as a complex bundle of changing physical and mental states. It is that vague sense of vulnerability, the feeling of being ungrounded, the quiet, persistent disease that can linger even when nothing is overtly wrong. You may have a good job, a loving family, and your health, and yet you lie awake at night with that familiar, nameless anxiety. This is sankhara dukkha. It is the stress of constantly having to maintain our sense of self, to defend our ego, to manage our lives, and to navigate a world that we ultimately cannot control. It is the inherent friction of being a self in a world of constant flux. This is the dukkha that fuels so much of our modern anxiety, our restlessness, and our desperate search for distraction. To truly understand how we perpetuate our own suffering in the face of these truths, there is a simple and powerful story. Imagine a person is walking through a forest, and suddenly they are struck by an arrow. This is painful, unavoidable. This is the first arrow. It represents the unavoidable, painful events of life we have just discussed: illness, loss, accidents, the pain of change. Now, imagine that this same person, reeling from the pain of the first arrow, takes out another arrow and shoots themselves with it in the very same spot. This seems absurd, and yet, this is precisely what we do. This is the second arrow. The first arrow is the painful event. The second arrow is our reaction to it. It is our narrative, our judgment, our resistance. The first arrow is the criticism from your boss. The second arrow is the story you tell yourself for the next 3 days. I am a failure. I'm going to be fired. Why does this always happen to me? It's so unfair. The first arrow is the physical pain of a chronic condition. The second arrow is the fear, the despair, and the anger you layer on top of it. My life is ruined. I can't bear this. We cannot always avoid the first arrow, for it is part of the territory of being alive. But the second arrow is the one we fire at ourselves. And it is this second arrow that causes the vast majority of our prolonged mental anguish. Our practice, our path to healing, is not about trying to build a world with no first arrows. It is about learning to notice when we are reaching for that second arrow, and gently, compassionately, choosing to put it down. Acknowledging dukkha is the first step. Seeing the second arrow in our hand is the next. When we can see this pattern clearly, without judgment, a space begins to open up, a space between the event and our reaction to it. We see that the ache of life is not a personal curse, but a universal condition. And in this shared understanding, we find not despair, but connection. We have diagnosed the ailment. We have seen how we contribute to our own fever. Now, we must ask, what is the source of this unease? Where does the impulse to fire that second arrow truly come from? To find the answer, we must turn our gaze inward, to the ceaseless, churning, and chaotic nature of our own minds. The source of this deep-seated unease, the architect of that second arrow, has been given a wonderfully evocative name in the Zen tradition. It is called the monkey mind. Picture a great tree with 1,000 branches, and on this tree lives a restless monkey. It never stays still for more than a moment. It leaps from a branch of memory to a branch of future planning, then swings to a branch of anxious worry, grabs onto a fleeting sensory perception, then jumps to a snippet of a song, then to a sudden, sharp judgment about itself or someone else. This is the nature of our untrained mind. It is a constant, chaotic, and exhausting chattering. When we sit in silence, when we lie down to sleep, the external world grows quiet, but this internal monkey begins its frantic acrobatics, filling our awareness with a relentless stream of noise. This is the engine of our discontent, the restless energy that denies us the peace we crave. This mental chatter is not entirely random. If we listen closely, we will notice that the monkey has its favorite branches, and many of them are dark and thorny. Our minds have what psychologists call a negativity bias. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense. Our ancestors' survival depended on being hyper-aware of potential threats. The one who spent all day admiring the beautiful flowers but failed to notice the rustle in the bushes was less likely to pass on their genes than the one who was constantly, nervously scanning for danger. Our brains are therefore wired for survival, not for happiness. They are like Velcro for negative experiences, holding onto them tightly, and, like Teflon, for positive experiences, letting them slide right off. You might receive 10 compliments in a day and 1 piece of criticism. And what does your monkey mind chatter about as you try to fall asleep? The criticism, of course. It replays the moment, analyzes every word, and builds elaborate, painful stories around it. This is the monkey mind's favorite pastime, and it is a powerful source of our suffering. This direct link between the monkey mind and our modern afflictions of insomnia and anxiety cannot be overstated. Anxiety, in its essence, is the monkey mind living almost exclusively in the future, swinging from one branch of what if to another. What if I fail the presentation? What if my child gets sick? What if I run out of money? It creates 1,000 hypothetical disasters and forces us to live through the emotional reality of each one, even though they have not happened and likely never will. Insomnia is simply what happens when this future-oriented anxiety meets a past-oriented regret in the quiet darkness of our bedroom. With no external distractions to occupy it, the monkey mind is let completely off its leash. It digs up old mistakes, replays embarrassing moments, and dissects painful conversations from years ago. It then seamlessly leaps to its worries about tomorrow, creating a vicious cycle of agitation that makes sleep impossible. We feel trapped, a prisoner to this internal monologue, believing that this voice, this frantic monkey, is who we are. But here we arrive at the most liberating, most hopeful teaching in this entire journey. You are not the monkey. You are not the thoughts it chatters. You are not the emotions it stirs up. You are the space in which all of this happens. Imagine the vast, open, clear blue sky. This sky is your true nature, your fundamental awareness. The thoughts, the feelings, the sensations, they are like clouds that drift through the sky. Some are white and puffy, some are dark and stormy. They come, they stay for a while, and they go. They are not the sky. The sky is not affected by the clouds. It does not cling to the white ones or fight with the dark ones. It simply allows them to be, to arise and pass away, remaining spacious and peaceful. We have spent our whole lives believing we are the clouds, identifying with every fleeting thought and mood. The path to freedom begins with the radical realization that we are the sky. This doesn't mean the clouds will stop coming, but it means we no longer have to be swept away by them. We can learn to rest in our own vast, silent awareness and simply watch them drift by. There is a beautiful story that illustrates how this shift in perspective can dissolve our suffering. A man was meditating in his small boat on a misty lake, his eyes closed, finding a rare moment of peace. Suddenly, a jarring thud rocked his boat, throwing him off balance. He opened his eyes, and a surge of anger flooded through him. Some careless fool had crashed into his boat, ruining his tranquility. He was ready to stand up and shout, to let loose a torrent of angry words at the person who had so rudely disturbed him. He turned to face the other boat, his mind filled with righteous indignation, and then he saw it. The other boat was empty. It had simply come untied from the shore, and the current had gently carried it into his. In that instant, all his anger vanished. It evaporated completely. There was no one to be angry at. The boat was empty. Where did the anger go? The anger was never in the event of the boat hitting his. The anger was in the story. His monkey mind instantly created the story of a careless, inconsiderate person who had wronged him. When the story was proven false, the anger had no ground to stand on. So much of our daily distress is caused by reacting to empty boats. The driver who cuts us off in traffic is an empty boat. The curt email from a colleague is an empty boat. The unexpected bill in the mail is an empty boat. These are simply events. They are neutral. They are the first arrow. It is our monkey mind that immediately leaps to create a story, a judgment, a narrative of personal offense. That person did that to me. This story is the second arrow we fire at ourselves. By creating a villain, our mind solidifies our own sense of being a victim, and in that drama, our suffering takes root and grows. The first step in taming this monkey is not to build a cage or to try and silence it with force that would only make it shriek louder. The first step is simply to see it, to recognize its antics without judgment, to smile at it as you would at a mischievous child. Ah, there it is again, the monkey mind, worrying about the future. There it is again, replaying the past. This simple act of noticing, of witnessing, begins to create a space. It untangles us from the storyline. We begin the profound shift from being the actor in the drama to being the audience. If we are the sky and not the clouds, the silent witness to the monkey's antics, then how do we learn to rest in that sky? How do we create a little more space, a little more silence? The secret does not lie in caging the monkey, but in giving it a single, simple task. It begins with the one thing that is always with us, the gentle rhythm of our own breath. Having seen the restless nature of the monkey mind, our first instinct might be to fight it, to argue with it, or to try and force it into submission. But this is like trying to flatten a stormy sea with a hammer. It only creates more agitation. The wisdom of Zen offers a different approach, one of gentleness, skill, and profound simplicity. Instead of fighting the storm, we learn to drop an anchor. This anchor doesn't make the storm disappear, but it holds our vessel steady amidst the tossing waves, preventing us from being swept away into the chaotic sea of thought. This anchor is always with us. It costs nothing, it requires no special equipment, and it is available in every single moment of our lives. This anchor is our own breath. The breath is a unique and miraculous process. It occupies a special place at the crossroads of the conscious and unconscious worlds. All day and all night, your body breathes for you, a perfect, autonomous rhythm managed by the oldest parts of your brain. You don't have to think about it at all. Yet, at any moment you choose, you can take conscious control. You can lengthen the in-breath, shorten the out-breath, or hold it for a moment. This makes the breath a perfect bridge, a physical gateway between the thinking, voluntary part of you and the silent, automatic wisdom of your body. It is the seam that stitches the mind and the body together. When our mind is lost in the past or the future, the breath is always, faithfully, in the present moment. By tethering our awareness to the breath, we gently pull our mind out of the tangled narratives of regret and anxiety and anchor it in the simple, calm reality of the here and now. The practice itself is deceptively simple. You can do it right now, as you are listening. There is no need to sit in a special posture or to close your eyes unless you feel comfortable doing so. Simply bring your attention, gently, to the physical sensation of breathing. You might choose to place your focus at the tip of your nostrils, feeling the cool air entering and the slightly warmer air leaving your body. Or perhaps you can rest your awareness on the rise and fall of your abdomen, feeling your belly gently expand with each in-breath and softly contract with each out-breath. The key is this: you are not trying to change your breath in any way. You are not trying to take a deep, spiritual breath or a special, calming breath. You are simply observing the breath exactly as it is. Let the body breathe itself. Your only task is to feel the sensations. That is all. Give the monkey mind this one simple branch to rest on, the feeling of the breath coming in and going out. Now, here is the most important instruction of all. Within a few seconds, or perhaps a minute, if you are lucky, your mind will wander. This is not a guess. It is a guarantee. A thought will arise. A memory will surface, a sound will distract you, and you will forget all about the breath. You will suddenly find yourself lost in a story, planning your dinner, or replaying a conversation. The moment you realize this has happened, you might feel a flicker of frustration, a sense of failure. This is the critical juncture. The practice is not about preventing the mind from wandering. The practice is the moment you notice it has wandered, and what you do next. For in that moment of noticing, you have just woken up. You have just experienced a moment of pure mindfulness. And what you do next is the essence of all compassion and training. Without any scolding or judgment, as gently and kindly as you would guide a lost puppy back home, you simply return your attention to the sensation of the breath. That is the entire practice. Your mind wanders, you notice, you gently return. 1,000 times, your mind will wander. 1,000 times, you will gently return. This is not a failure. This is the training itself. Every time you guide your awareness back to the breath, you are strengthening the muscle of your attention. You are carving a new neural pathway in your brain, a pathway of calm, focus, and non-judgmental awareness. It is a bicep curl for your soul. Each repetition weakens the habitual, frantic path of the monkey mind and reinforces the new, peaceful path of returning home to the present moment. This process is not merely psychological, it is deeply physiological. When our monkey mind is in control, our body is often in a low-grade state of fight or flight, governed by the sympathetic nervous system. Our heart rate is slightly elevated, our muscles are tense, our breathing is shallow. When you deliberately place your attention on the slow, rhythmic sensation of the breath, you send a powerful signal to your brain that you are safe. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and digest mode. Your heart rate begins to slow, your muscles can release their hidden tension, and a wave of calm can begin to wash over your entire system. This is not magic. It is the simple, biological consequence of paying attention to the wisdom of your own body. Think of it like learning to drive a car. At first, the process requires an intense, almost painful level of focus. Your hands grip the wheel. Your eyes are wide. You are consciously aware of every single action. The mirror, the signal, the brake, the gas. It feels awkward and demanding. But with practice, something changes. Driving becomes second nature. It becomes smooth, integrated, almost effortless. You can drive safely while listening to music or holding a conversation. The complex actions have been absorbed into a deeper part of your being. In the very same way, the practice of returning your attention to the breath can feel effortful and even frustrating at first. But with patient, compassionate repetition, it becomes a new, healthy habit. It becomes a peaceful reflex. In a moment of sudden stress, instead of reacting with anger or fear, you will find yourself automatically, instinctively, taking a conscious breath. You will have built a sanctuary inside yourself, a quiet harbor you can return to in any storm. This simple, foundational practice of anchoring in the breath is the first practical step on our journey. It is the how of finding stillness. But to truly deepen our understanding and make our practice resilient, we must also explore the why. Why is the mind so restless to begin with? What is the larger context of our suffering and our potential for freedom? To answer these questions, we now turn from the anchor itself to the map of the sea. We turn to the clear, profound, and practical framework that the Buddha laid out over 2.5 millennia ago. The 4 Noble Truths. Having seen the restless, chaotic nature of the monkey mind, our first instinct might be to react with force. We might try to wrestle it into submission, to argue with its anxious narratives, or to build a mental cage to contain it. But this approach is like trying to calm a stormy sea by beating the waves with a hammer. It only creates more turbulence, more resistance, and more exhaustion. The profound wisdom of the Zen path offers a radically different strategy, one rooted in skill, gentleness, and an almost impossible simplicity. Instead of fighting the storm of thought, we learn how to drop an anchor. An anchor, it is important to remember, does not stop the storm. The winds will still howl, and the waves will still crash. But the anchor holds our vessel, our precious awareness, steady and secure. It connects us to the quiet, stable ground beneath the churning surface, preventing us from being swept away into the vast, disorienting sea of our own mental chaos. This anchor is not something you need to acquire. It is not outside of you. It has been with you since the moment of your birth and will be with you until your very last moment. It costs nothing. It requires no special uniform or belief system, and it is available to you right now. This anchor is your own breath. The breath is a truly miraculous process, a marvel of biological engineering, but its true power in this practice lies in its unique position as a bridge, a connecting point between the world of conscious intention and the vast, silent world of our unconscious bodily processes. Think about it. All day and all night, your body breathes for you. An ancient, intelligent part of your nervous system manages the perfect rhythm of inhalation and exhalation, adjusting to your every need without any conscious input. It is a perfect, autonomous dance. And yet, in any moment that you choose, you can step into that dance. You can consciously take the reins. You can decide to lengthen your in-breath, to extend your out-breath, or to pause for a moment in the stillness between them. This dual nature makes the breath the ultimate gateway. It is the seam that stitches the thinking mind and the feeling body together into a unified whole. In our modern lives, we often live as if these two are separate entities. Our mind is lost in a digital screen, in a future projection, in a past regret, while our body is carrying the physical tension of all that thinking. The breath is the tool that reunites these two estranged parts of ourselves. When your mind is lost in the turbulent stories of yesterday and tomorrow, the breath is always, faithfully, happening right now, in this present moment. By tethering our wandering attention to the physical sensations of the breath, we gently but firmly pull our mind out of the tangled illusions of time and anchor it in the simple, solid, and calming reality of the here and now. The practice itself is a study in simplicity, an antidote to the complexity we so often create for ourselves. You can begin right now, in this very moment. There is no need for a special cushion or a silent room, though those can be helpful. You can do this in your office chair, on a crowded bus, while waiting in line at the store. The first step is simply to adopt an attitude of kindness toward yourself. Then, gently guide your attention to the physical, tangible sensations of your breathing. You might choose one spot to rest your awareness. For many, the tip of the nostrils is a good place to start. Try to feel the subtle sensations there. Feel the faint coolness of the air as it enters your body, and the ghost of warmth as it leaves. Notice the delicate, tickling sensation of the air passing over your skin. There is a whole universe of sensation in that tiny spot, if you listen closely enough. Alternatively, you can choose to rest your awareness on your abdomen. Place a hand there if it helps. Feel the gentle expansion, the slight tightening of your clothing as you breathe in, and the soft release, the falling away as you breathe out. Now, here is the most crucial part of the instruction. The part that transforms this from a concentration exercise into a practice of profound compassion. The intention is not to change or control your breath in any way. You are not trying to take a deep breath, or a calming breath, or a spiritual breath. The moment you try to force it, you have introduced struggle, and the monkey mind loves to struggle. The invitation is simply to let the body breathe all by itself. Your only job is to be the kind, curious witness to the process. Let your breath be shallow, let it be deep, let it be fast or slow. There is no right way for your breath to be. There is only a gentle, accepting way to be with it, whatever its rhythm. You are giving the restless monkey mind a single, simple, and fascinating branch to rest upon. The pure, non-verbal sensation of the breath, rising and falling, coming in and going out. And now, we come to the part of the practice that is not a possibility, but a certainty. Within a few moments, your mind will wander, an itch will appear on your face, a sound from the street will catch your attention, a memory will bubble up from nowhere. You will start planning your next meal. You will worry about a task you forgot. You will begin a silent argument with someone in your head, and you will completely forget about the breath. You will be lost, gone from the present moment, swept away on a current of thought. This is not a sign of failure. It is not an interruption to your practice. This is the practice. The moment that you notice the, there I go again, lost in thought. That moment of noticing is a moment of pure gold. It is a flash of light, a moment of awakening from the dream of thought. In that precious instant, you are fully present, fully aware, and what you do next defines the entire character of your spiritual path. Instead of greeting this moment with a sigh of frustration or a wave of self-criticism, "I'm so bad at this," you greet it with the warmth and kindness of a patient parent finding a beloved child who has wandered off. There you are. And with infinite gentleness, without any drama or scolding, you simply, kindly, guide your attention back home to the anchor, back to the physical sensation of the breath. This is the entire movement. Your mind wanders away. You notice that it has wandered, and you gently guide it back. 1,000 times in a single session, your mind will stray. 1,000 times, you will become a master of the gentle return. This is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are training. Every single time you escort your awareness back to the breath, you are performing a sacred act. You are weakening the old, habitual, neural pathways of anxiety and distraction, and you are strengthening a new, powerful, neural pathway of calm, focus, and compassionate self-awareness. Think of it as training a playful, easily distracted puppy. You would not scream at the puppy every time it ran off to chase a butterfly. You would smile at its nature, and you would gently call its name and guide it back to your side. Your mind is that puppy. Treat it with the same boundless patience and loving kindness. Each gentle return is a bicep curl for your soul. This practice is not merely a psychological trick. It is a profound physiological intervention. The normal state for many of us, fueled by the monkey mind, is a low-grade state of fight, flight, or freeze. This is the domain of the sympathetic nervous system. It floods our body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, keeping our heart rate slightly elevated, our muscles subtly tensed, our senses on high alert. It is the body's accelerator pedal, constantly being pressed. When you deliberately and gently place your focus on the slow, rhythmic, physical sensation of your breath, especially the exhale, you are sending a direct, non-verbal signal to your nervous system that you are safe. This action is like gently pressing the body's brake pedal. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's rest and digest, or tend and befriend mode. This system is designed to conserve energy, to slow the heart rate, to promote digestion, and to allow for cellular repair and restoration. The feeling of calm that arises from breath awareness is not an imagined state. It is the real, tangible, physiological result of consciously shifting your nervous system out of alarm mode and into a state of safety and peace. Think of this entire process like learning to drive a car. Remember the first few times you sat behind the wheel. It was likely an experience of overwhelming, awkward concentration. Your hands gripped the wheel with white knuckles. Your eyes darted everywhere, trying to process the mirrors, the pedals, the speedometer, the traffic. Every action was deliberate and clumsy. It was work. But what happened after weeks and months of patient practice? The process became smooth, integrated, second nature. You can now drive perfectly well while listening to a podcast or thinking about your day. The complex skills have been absorbed into a deeper, more embodied part of your intelligence. It has become a state of being, not just a series of actions. In the very same way, the practice of returning your attention to the breath can feel effortful, even tedious at first. But with patient, compassionate, and consistent repetition, it becomes an embodied skill. It weaves itself into the fabric of your being. You will find that in a moment of sudden stress at work, instead of your habitual reaction of panic or anger, your first instinct will be to connect with your breath. You will have built a sanctuary inside yourself, a quiet, reliable harbor you can return to in the midst of any life storm. This simple, foundational practice of anchoring in the breath is the first practical step on our journey inward. It is the fundamental how of finding stillness and creating space. But to make our practice truly resilient, to give it the power to not only calm us but to liberate us, we must also understand the deeper context in which we are working. We must look at the map of the human heart that has been offered to us. Having learned how to hold our anchor, we now turn our attention to understanding the nature of the sea itself. We turn to the clear, profound, and compassionate diagnosis of the human condition, known as the Four Noble Truths. Having found our anchor in the breath, we can now begin to navigate the vast and often turbulent waters of our inner world with a little more stability. But an anchor alone is not enough for a long journey. We also need a map, a reliable guide that shows us where we are going, and the nature of the terrain ahead. In the Buddhist tradition, this map is not a set of beliefs to be accepted on faith, but a pragmatic, experiential framework known as the Four Noble Truths. The word truth here can be misleading. It is better understood in the way a doctor uses it. This is not a dogma, but a diagnosis. It is a clear, logical, and compassionate framework for understanding and resolving any problem, presented in the same way a skilled physician would approach an illness. First, identify the symptom. Second, determine the cause. Third, confirm that a cure is possible. And fourth, prescribe the course of treatment. This is the practical, life-affirming heart of the Buddha's teaching. The first noble truth is the diagnosis of the symptom. It is the truth of dukkha, which we have already explored. It is the acknowledgement that in our human life, there exists a fundamental level of stress, unease, and unsatisfactoriness. It is the wobble in the wheel, the low-grade fever of the spirit, the frantic restlessness of the monkey mind. It is the pain of the first arrow, the unavoidable hardships of existence, and more importantly, the prolonged suffering of the second arrow, the one we shoot at ourselves through our reactions, our stories, and our resistance. To state this first truth is simply to be honest. It is to walk into the doctor's office and say, "Something hurts. I am not at ease." This admission is not an act of weakness or pessimism. It is the essential first act of courage and self-compassion, the necessary starting point for all healing. We have named the symptom, and now we are ready to understand its origin. The second noble truth identifies the precise cause of our disease. This is a pivotal moment because it moves us from being a passive victim of our suffering to an empowered investigator of its roots. The teaching states that the origin of dukkha is tanha, a Pali word that translates as thirst, craving, or insatiable desire. It is the relentless, compulsive, wanting, and pushing away that keeps the monkey mind in a perpetual state of agitation. This thirst is not just a simple wish for something. It is a deep, primal, and often unconscious force that drives our every action. This thirst manifests in three primary forms. The first is the most obvious, the craving for sense pleasures. This is the thirst for delicious food, for beautiful sights and sounds, for sexual gratification, for comfort, for praise, for the next hit of dopamine from a social media notification. We chase these pleasures believing they will finally make us happy, but their satisfaction is always fleeting. Like trying to quench a thirst by drinking salt water, the pleasure fades, and the thirst returns, often stronger than before, trapping us in an endless cycle of pursuit and temporary gratification, a cycle known as samsara. The second form of this thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is the craving to become, the thirst for existence. This is the deep-seated desire of the ego to solidify itself, to be someone. It is the craving to be more successful, more intelligent, more attractive, more respected, or even more spiritual. It is the voice that whispers, "I will finally be happy when I get that promotion, when I find the perfect partner, when I lose 10 pounds, when people finally recognize my worth." This form of craving is the engine of our ambition and our anxiety. We cling desperately to our identities, our reputations, and the stories we tell about ourselves, and we suffer immensely when they are threatened. The thirst to become something else is a denial of who we are right now, a constant state of self-rejection that guarantees we are never at peace where we are. The third form is the mirror image of the second, the craving to get rid of, the thirst for non-existence. This is not just a desire for death, but the constant daily energy of aversion, of pushing away. It is the frantic desire to get rid of an unpleasant feeling like boredom, anxiety, or jealousy. It is the intense irritation we feel toward a difficult person or a frustrating situation. It is the voice that screams, "I can't stand this." This pushing away feels like the opposite of clinging, but it comes from the very same root, a violent resistance to reality as it is. Whether we are desperately pulling something toward us or desperately pushing it away, we are in a state of struggle. We are at war with the present moment. This constant push and pull of tanha is the fuel that keeps the monkey mind leaping frantically from branch to branch. It is the direct cause of the second arrow. The third noble truth is the brilliant, hopeful light at the center of this diagnosis. It is the prognosis, the doctor's reassuring statement. This condition is treatable. There is a cure. This truth states that there can be a cessation of dukkha, an end to this frantic thirst. This is arguably the most important of the four truths, because without it, the first two would simply be a recipe for despair. The cessation of suffering, known as nirodha, does not mean entering a blank, empty trance or annihilating the self. It means the end of compulsive craving. It is the freedom that comes when the inner thirst has been quenched. It is a state of profound inner peace, balance, and clarity that is not dependent on whether things are going our way. It does not mean a life free from first arrow pain, loss, and sickness will still occur. It means a life free from the torment of the second arrow. It is the discovery of an inner wealth that makes us immune to the poverty of constantly wanting more. This is the promise, the possibility of liberation. To illustrate the supremely practical nature of these truths, the Buddha told the story of a man shot by a poisoned arrow. The man's friends and family rush to get a surgeon, but the wounded man objects. "Wait," he says, "before you pull out the arrow, I need to know the name of the man who shot me. What caste did he belong to? Was he tall or short? Where does he live? What was his bow made of, bamboo or wood? What kind of string did he use? What type of feathers were on the arrow? What was the poison made from?" The Buddha asked his followers, what would happen to such a man? The answer is simple. He would die before he ever got the answers to his questions. The only urgent, compassionate, and intelligent thing to do in that situation is to pull out the arrow. This parable is a powerful critique of purely intellectual or metaphysical speculation. The Four Noble Truths are not concerned with questions about the creation of the universe, the existence of a God, or the nature of a soul. They are concerned with one thing and one thing only: identifying the arrow of suffering, understanding how it got there, knowing that its removal is possible, and providing the precise instructions for how to pull it out. This leads us to the fourth noble truth, the doctor's prescription. It is the truth of the path that leads to the end of suffering. This path is called the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a comprehensive and holistic program of living that touches every aspect of our existence. It is not a linear set of steps to be completed in order, but 8 interconnected facets of a wise and compassionate life to be cultivated simultaneously. This path is traditionally divided into 3 sections of training. First is the training in wisdom, which includes right view and right intention. Second is the training in ethical conduct, which includes right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And third is the training in mental discipline, which includes right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This path is the medicine. It is the detailed, practical guide for how to heal ourselves, how to quench the fire of craving, and how to find a lasting peace that does not depend on the ever-changing conditions of the world. The map has shown us our location and our destination. It has also shown us a clear path leading from one to the other. Now, our journey truly begins as we take the very first step on that path, a step that has the power to change everything, the cultivation of a new way of seeing. Having accepted the physician's diagnosis that the symptom is unease, the cause is thirst, and a cure is possible, we are now given the prescription. This prescription is the Noble Eightfold Path, a sublime and practical guide to living a life of wisdom, integrity, and peace. This is not a sequence of linear steps where you must perfect one before moving to the next. Rather, it is a set of 8 interconnected threads that, when woven together, create a beautiful and resilient tapestry of a well-lived life. And this path begins not with an action, but with a shift in perception. Before we can walk the path correctly, we must first be able to see it clearly. Thus, the first 2 threads are right view and right intention. Together, they are the rudder and the compass for our entire journey. Without them, all our efforts, no matter how sincere, risk leading us further astray. Right view, or samma dittehi in the Pali language, is the foundation upon which everything else is built. The word right here does not mean correct in a rigid, dogmatic sense, as opposed to someone else's wrong view. A more skillful translation is wise, wholesome, or effective. It is the way of seeing the world that leads directly to the lessening of suffering for ourselves and for others. It is not about adopting a new set of intellectual beliefs or philosophical opinions to debate. It is about fundamentally changing the lens through which you perceive reality. Most of us see the world through a lens clouded and distorted by our past conditioning, our fears, our desires, and our cultural biases. Right view is the practice of cleaning that lens so that we may begin to see things for the first time, not as we wish they were or fear they might be, but simply as they are. So what does this clear seeing entail? Primarily, it means seeing the world through the lens of the three fundamental characteristics of existence, also known as the three marks. The first is impermanence, anicca. This is the direct, unwavering recognition that everything is in a constant state of flux. Your body is changing with every breath. Your thoughts are a fleeting parade. Your emotions are like weather patterns passing through the sky. Relationships evolve, societies shift, mountains rise and fall. Nothing is fixed. Seeing this clearly is not a cause for sadness, but for liberation. When we truly know that pleasurable moments are impermanent, we cherish them more fully without desperately clinging to them. When we truly know that painful moments are impermanent, we can endure them with greater patience and less despair, knowing in our bones that this too shall pass. The second mark is unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, which we have already met. It is seeing clearly that any attempt to find lasting, ultimate happiness in impermanent things is doomed to failure. It is recognizing the subtle stress and friction that comes from living in a conditioned world, a world of constant change and uncertainty. The third, and perhaps most profound mark, is no self, or anatta. This is the radical insight that there is no fixed, solid, independent me at the center of our experience. What we call our self is in fact a dynamic, interdependent processor, constantly changing constellation of body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. Seeing this directly loosens the ego's terrified grip. It helps us to take things less personally and to see that the self we are so busy defending is more like a flowing river than a solid statue. Finally, right view includes a practical understanding of the law of cause and effect, or karma. This is not a mystical system of reward and punishment from an outside force, but a natural law of the heart. It simply states that our intentions have consequences. Wholesome, skillful intentions rooted in kindness and wisdom will naturally lead to outcomes of peace and happiness. Unwholesome, unskillful intentions rooted in greed, hatred, and confusion will naturally lead to outcomes of conflict and suffering. This view places the power and responsibility for our happiness squarely in our own hands. With this clearer view of the terrain, we can now calibrate our compass. This is right intention, or samma sankappa. Intention is the seed from which all of our speech and actions grow. If we plant a seed of poison, we cannot expect to harvest healing fruit. The outer action might appear the same, but the inner intention infuses it with its true quality. You can offer someone a gift with the intention of pure generosity, or you can offer the same gift with the intention of making them feel indebted to you. The gift is the same. The energy, the karma, the result is worlds apart. Right intention is the conscious practice of purifying our motives, of aligning our will with wisdom and compassion. This practice involves actively cultivating three types of wholesome intentions. The first is the intention of renunciation, or letting go. This is the direct antidote to the thirst of craving and greed. In our consumer culture, renunciation sounds like a harsh deprivation, but in this context, it is not about giving up your home or your possessions. It is the beautiful, inner practice of releasing your tight-fisted grip on things. It is the intention to find happiness not in acquiring more, but in needing less. It is the willingness to let go of outcomes you cannot control, to release old resentments, and to abandon the futile project of trying to make the world conform perfectly to your desires. It is an intention that leads to inner lightness, simplicity, and profound contentment. The second is the intention of goodwill, which is the direct antidote to hatred, anger, and aversion. This is the conscious cultivation of metta, or loving kindness. It is the sincere wish for the well-being and happiness of all beings, without exception, starting with yourself. Before you speak, before you act, you can create a brief, silent pause and check your intention. Is it coming from a place of wanting to help, to heal, to connect? Or is it coming from a place of wanting to hurt, to diminish, to dominate? Choosing to align with goodwill, even when it is difficult, transforms our interactions from battlegrounds into opportunities for connection. Imagine entering a difficult conversation, not with the intention to win, but with the intention to understand. The entire dynamic shifts from combat to collaboration. The third is the intention of harmlessness, or compassion. This is the direct antidote to cruelty and violence, both physical and mental. It is the intention to cause no harm, to the best of our ability, to any living creature. This intention arises naturally from right view, from seeing that all beings, just like ourselves, wish to be happy and to be free from suffering. It is the recognition of our shared vulnerability and our deep interconnectedness. This intention guides us to live in a way that is gentle on the earth, gentle with others, and most importantly, gentle with ourselves. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates the power of intention, especially the intention of letting go. Two monks, one old and one young, were traveling together. They came to a river with a strong current where a beautiful young woman in fine clothes stood, afraid to cross for fear of ruining her silks. Without a word, the old monk hoisted the woman onto his back, carried her across the churning river, and set her down on the other side. He then continued on his way. The younger monk was utterly scandalized. He was horrified. They had taken strict vows never to touch a woman, and his master had just carried one on his back. For the next several hours, as they walked in silence, the younger monk's mind was a storm of judgment. He replayed the scene over and over, building his case, fuming with righteous indignation. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he burst out, "Master, how could you do that? You know we are forbidden to touch a woman, yet you carried her across the river." The old monk looked at his young companion with a gentle, compassionate expression. "Oh, her?" he said calmly. "I left her by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story reveals everything about right intention. The old monk's intention was pure compassion and harmlessness to help someone in need. The act was finished the moment it was done. The younger monk, however, became trapped by his unskillful intentions of judgment, clinging to rules, and resentment. He was carrying the woman in his mind long after she was gone, and his burden was far heavier than the physical woman had been. Our minds are the same. We carry our grudges, our anxieties, and our attachments for hours, days, or even years, poisoning our own peace because our intentions are not aligned with wisdom. Right view and right intention, working together, are the practice of learning what to pick up, and more importantly, what to put down. They are the twin engines of liberation, setting our course toward a peaceful heart. With this inner compass now calibrated, we can begin to see how this new orientation transforms our engagement with the world around us, starting with the power and the peril of our own words. With our inner world reoriented by right view and our deepest motivations purified by right intention, the path now moves from the internal to the external. It bridges the gap between our private insights and our public life. For while wisdom may be born in silence, it must be tested and proven in the messy, complicated arena of human relationships. This next phase of the journey is known as sila, or ethical conduct. It is comprised of 3 interconnected practices: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. These are not a set of rigid, moralistic rules imposed by an external authority. Rather, they are a wise and compassionate guide for living in a way that skillfully avoids causing harm to others and, just as importantly, to ourselves. They are the practical expression of a heart that is beginning to understand the truth of interconnectedness. To live ethically is to recognize that the peace we seek for ourselves is inseparable from the peace we offer to the world. A mind filled with the memory of harmful words or the guilt of harmful actions cannot find the stillness required for deep meditation. Sila, therefore, is the essential practice of preparing the ground of our mind, making it calm, clear, and fertile for wisdom to grow. It begins with right speech, or samma vacha, for our words are one of the most powerful and frequent ways we interact with the world. A single word can start a war or seal a peace treaty. It can shatter a heart or heal it. Right speech is the practice of wielding this power with mindfulness, wisdom, and compassion. It entails the conscious abandoning of 4 types of harmful speech. The first is false speech. This is more than simply telling outright lies. It includes all forms of dishonesty, the subtle exaggerations we use to make our stories more impressive, the convenient omissions that paint us in a better light, the promises we make with no real intention of keeping them. Each time we are dishonest, no matter how small it seems, we create a fissure within our own integrity. We create a slight dissonance, a background static of anxiety about being discovered. A mind that is true, that aligns its words with reality, is a mind at peace with itself. A mind that has nothing to hide, and therefore nothing to fear. The second form of harmful speech is divisive speech, or slander. This is the poison of gossip. It is using words to set one person against another, to create discord, or to damage someone's reputation behind their back. We must look honestly at why we are drawn to gossip. Often, it is a way to feel a sense of superiority, to bond with someone by creating a common enemy, or to feel like an insider with special information. But this bond is a fragile one, built on negativity. Divisive speech creates an atmosphere of distrust and suspicion. When we speak ill of others who are not present, we subtly signal to those who are present that we might one day do the same to them. It erodes the very fabric of community. Right speech invites us to speak in ways that bring people together, that encourage harmony, and that protect the dignity of all, whether they are in the room or not. The third is harsh speech. This includes the obvious forms like yelling, insulting, cursing, and name-calling, but it also encompasses the more subtle aggressions of our modern world, the biting sarcasm that is disguised as a joke, the condescending tone that belittles another's intelligence, the passive-aggressive comment designed to inflict guilt, or the practice of brutal honesty, which is often more about being brutal than about being honest. The Buddha taught that our words should be like a gift. They should be true, but they should also be kind, beneficial, and spoken at the proper time. Before speaking, especially in a difficult situation, we can train ourselves to pause and ask, is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? If it is not all three, then often the wisest and most compassionate response is a noble silence. The fourth and final aspect of right speech is abstaining from idle chatter. In our age of endless social media feeds, 24-hour news, and the constant pressure to have an opinion on everything, this may be the most challenging practice of all. Idle chatter is purposeless speech. It is talking simply to fill the silence, to dissipate nervous energy, or to avoid the intimacy of being present with another person. It clutters the mind, drains our energy, and prevents us from hearing the quieter, deeper truths within ourselves and others. Right speech encourages us to value silence and to use our words with intention and purpose as tools for connection, understanding, and healing. There is a deeply moving story that illustrates the irreversible power of our words. A man went about his village, spreading a malicious rumor about a wise old sage. Later, filled with remorse, he went to the sage to ask for forgiveness and to find out how he could make amends. The sage listened patiently and then said, "There is one thing you can do. Go home, take your finest feather pillow, cut it open, and scatter all the feathers to the wind. Then, come back to me." The man did as he was told. He returned to the sage and asked, "Is that all?" "No," said the sage. "Now, go and collect every single one of those feathers and put them back in the pillow." The man was aghast. "But that's impossible. The wind has carried them everywhere." The old sage nodded slowly. "So it is with your words. They are easily spoken, but you can never, ever gather them all back. From our words, we turn to our deeds. Right action, or sammakamanta, is the practice of aligning our physical behavior with our intention of harmlessness. Traditionally, this is expressed through three core abstentions. The first is to abstain from taking life. On its most basic level, this means not killing other human beings. But its spirit extends much further into a profound reverence for all life. It is the cultivation of a gentle heart that seeks to protect and not harm any living creature, recognizing that all beings share the same fundamental wish to live and to avoid pain. This encourages us to consider the impact of our actions on animals and the environment, fostering a sense of kinship rather than domination. The second is to abstain from taking what is not given. This is much broader than simply not robbing a bank. It means not stealing office supplies, not taking credit for a colleague's work, not cheating on our taxes, and not exploiting the trust or labor of others for our own gain. It is the practice of radical honesty and respect for the efforts and property of others, which in turn cultivates a mind of generosity and contentment. The third is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is not a call for prudishness or a denial of our human sexuality. It is a call to ensure that our sexual expression is not a source of harm for ourselves or for anyone else. It is about avoiding exploitation, coercion, and dishonesty within our intimate relationships. It means not treating another person as a mere object for our own gratification, but as a whole, being deserving of respect, care, and honesty. It is the practice of bringing mindfulness, kindness, and commitment into the most intimate aspects of our lives. Finally, the path of sila extends into the area where we spend the majority of our waking hours, our work. Right livelihood, or samma ajiva, is the profound challenge to earn our living in a way that is honorable, ethical, and does not cause harm. Some livelihoods are obviously unskillful, such as dealing in weapons, selling addictive substances, or engaging in fraudulent schemes. But for many of us, the questions are more subtle. Does my work require me to be dishonest? Does my company's success depend on exploiting people or the planet? Does my profession contribute to the collective anxiety, greed, or violence in the world? These are not easy questions, and the path does not demand that everyone quit their job tomorrow. It is an invitation to a deep and honest inquiry. It encourages us to be mindful of the impact of our professional life and to strive, over time, to align the way we earn our living more closely with our deepest values of compassion and integrity. Living with this degree of ethical mindfulness, watching our speech, our actions, and our work does something remarkable to the mind. It is like allowing a jar of muddy water to sit perfectly still. All the mud of guilt, remorse, defensiveness, and fear of being discovered begins to settle to the bottom. What is left is a mind that is clear, bright, calm, and joyful. This clarity and joy, born of a clear conscience, is the essential foundation for the deeper work of meditation. You cannot find inner peace if your outer life is a source of harm and agitation. Ethical conduct is not a moral burden. It is the liberating act of creating the inner and outer conditions for peace to flourish. But to sustain this way of living, especially when faced with temptation or difficulty, requires a particular kind of inner strength, a skillful and balanced energy. This brings us to the next crucial element of the path: right effort. With our inner compass set by right view and right intention, and our outer life aligned through the ethical practices of right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we arrive at a crucial question: how do we sustain this journey? A path, no matter how clearly mapped, requires energy to walk. In our modern culture, the word effort is often fraught with tension. It conjures images of striving, of struggle, of gritting our teeth and pushing through pioneer mindset that often leads to burnout and exhaustion. It is therefore essential to understand that right effort, or samavayama, is not this kind of brute force. A better translation might be right energy, right diligence, or even right joyful endeavor. It is not about trying harder, but about applying energy wisely, skillfully, and with a sense of balanced persistence. It is the art of tending to the garden of our mind, a practice that requires patience and intelligence rather than aggression. This skillful art of tending the mind is traditionally broken down into 4 distinct, yet interconnected types of effort. These 4 great efforts provide a complete framework for mental cultivation, showing us precisely where and how to apply our energy. The first is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. This is the practice of wise prevention, of being a skillful gatekeeper for our mind. Through mindfulness, we begin to recognize the specific triggers and conditions that tend to give rise to negative mental states, like anger, envy, or despair. Perhaps you notice that endlessly scrolling through a particular social media feed consistently leaves you feeling inadequate and envious. Or maybe you realize that engaging in gossip with a certain colleague always stirs up negativity and judgment in your heart. The effort of prevention is the wisdom to recognize these patterns and to choose, consciously, not to engage. It is about guarding the doors of our senses, eyes, ears, and mind from stimuli that we know are toxic to our peace. This is not about hiding from the world, but about no longer naively inviting poison into our own home. It is the proactive, intelligent effort of creating an environment, both inner and outer, that is conducive to peace. The second is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best efforts at prevention, negative states will inevitably arise. The seeds are already there, in the soil of our consciousness. A careless word from someone ignites a flash of anger. Seeing another's success sparks a pang of jealousy. A piece of bad news triggers a spiral of anxiety. The second effort is the skillful work of dealing with these weeds once they have sprouted. Abandoning here does not mean violently suppressing the emotion, which only strengthens it, nor does it mean hating ourselves for having it. It means skillfully applying an antidote. It is a compassionate and strategic process. If the mind is consumed by anger, we can make the effort to intentionally cultivate thoughts of loving kindness, remembering the humanity of the other person. If the mind is seized by obsessive desire or craving, we can make the effort to reflect on the downsides of that craving, the stress and dukkha it causes. When a wave of anxiety arises, we can apply the antidote of returning our full attention to the anchor of the breath. This is an active, engaged process. It is about having a well-stocked toolkit of mental remedies and learning which one to apply to gently and effectively neutralize the poison of an unwholesome state, helping it to wither and pass away. The third effort shifts our focus from the negative to the positive. It is the effort to cultivate wholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the joyful and creative aspect of the practice, the part that involves intentionally planting seeds of beauty and goodness in our mental garden. If our mind is a garden, it is not enough to simply pull the weeds. We must also consciously plant flowers. This means setting aside time and energy to cultivate states like kindness, compassion, gratitude, joy, and tranquility. We can make the effort to start a formal metta or loving kindness meditation practice, actively sending well wishes to ourselves and others. We can keep a gratitude journal, taking a few minutes each day to reflect on the things we are thankful for, no matter how small. We can make the effort to read inspiring spiritual texts, listen to wise teachers, or deliberately spend more time with kind, positive, and supportive friends, what the Buddha called kalyana mitta, or noble friendship. This is not a passive waiting for happiness to strike. It is the joyful work of creating the causes and conditions for happiness and peace to bloom within us. The fourth and final effort is the effort to maintain wholesome states that have already arisen. This is the crucial practice of nurturing the positive. Sometimes, through our practice, or simply by grace, a moment of genuine peace, clarity, or joy will arise. Our habitual tendency is to either ignore it, taking it for granted, or to immediately start worrying about when it will end. The fourth effort invites us to do the opposite. When a wholesome state arises, we make the effort to truly savor it, to protect it. We notice it fully. Ah, this is what peace feels like. There is a coolness in my chest, a stillness in my mind. We can investigate it with gentle curiosity. What conditions allowed this moment of calm to appear? By paying full attention to these positive states, we honor them and strengthen their neural pathways, making them more likely to arise again in the future. It is like protecting a young, tender sprout from being trampled, giving it the time and space it needs to grow strong and resilient. Together, these four efforts provide a balanced and complete approach to mental cultivation. But the quality of this effort is paramount. There is a beautiful story from the Buddha's life that perfectly illustrates the necessary balance. There was a monk named Sona who was incredibly zealous in his practice. He was determined to become enlightened quickly, so he practiced walking meditation day and night with such intensity that the soles of his feet began to crack and bleed, staining the monastery path with his blood. Despite his heroic efforts, his mind was not finding peace, but only growing more agitated and restless. He became deeply disheartened and began to think that the path was not for him, that perhaps he should give up and return to his old life. The Buddha, knowing what was in Sona's mind, paid him a visit. He began by asking, "Sona, is it true that before you became a monk, you were a skilled musician, renowned for your mastery of the lute?" "Yes, Lord, that is true," Sona replied. The Buddha then asked a series of skillful questions. "Tell me, Sona, when the strings of your lute were wound too tightly, did it produce a beautiful and resonant sound?" "No, Lord," said Sona. "It sounded harsh and sharp." "And when the strings were too slack, too loose, did it produce a beautiful sound then?" "No, Lord," Sona replied. "It produced no sound at all, or only a dull thud." The Buddha then asked his final, pivotal question. "But when the strings of your lute were tuned just right, not too tight and not too slack, but perfectly balanced, did it then produce a sublime and melodious sound?" "Yes, Lord, it did." The Buddha then looked at Sona with great compassion and said, "In the very same way, Sona, energy that is too strained and effortful leads to restlessness and agitation, and energy that is too slack and lazy leads to dullness and apathy. Therefore, Sona, resolve to cultivate a balance of energy. Find the harmony in your practice and make that your aim." This teaching of the middle way, in effort, is a profound antidote to the extremes of our modern world, the culture of burnout on one side, and the trap of procrastination and apathy on the other. Right effort is not a tense, jaw-clenching, muscle-straining attack on our own mind. It is more like the steady, persistent, and powerful flow of water. Water is soft and yielding, yet over time it can wear away the hardest stone. This is the quality of skillful effort. It is consistent, patient, and imbued with a sense of ease, not struggle. It is the joy found in the process of cultivation itself, not a desperate striving for a future result, but to apply this effort skillfully, to know when a string needs tightening, when it needs loosening, when it is time to weed the garden, and when it is time to water. The flowers requires a precise and intimate awareness of our own inner landscape from moment to moment. We need a perfect internal guidance system that can tell us what is needed right now. This unerring guide, this heart of the entire path, is the practice of right mindfulness. Having learned to apply our energy with the skillful balance of a master musician tuning their instrument, we now arrive at the very heart of the path, the central hub from which all the other spokes of the wheel draw their strength and guidance. This is right mindfulness, or samasati. We have already met mindfulness as the practice of anchoring ourselves to the breath, but that is merely the gateway. True right mindfulness is a far more expansive, profound, and life-altering practice. It is the art and science of being fully present with our life as it unfolds, moment by precious moment. The Pali word sati carries a connotation of remembering. It is the practice of remembering to return, remembering to come back from the land of thought to the reality of the present, remembering our intention to be awake and kind. In this sense, mindfulness is not a passive, trance-like state. It is an active, engaged, and courageous awareness, a steady, unwavering inner light that we learn to shine on every corner of our experience. Before we explore its vast landscape, it is crucial to be clear about what mindfulness is and what it is not. Mindfulness is not about stopping our thoughts or trying to empty our mind. The mind produces thoughts as the heart produces beats. Trying to stop them is a futile and frustrating struggle. Mindfulness is also not about thinking about the present moment, analyzing it, or judging it. It is a more direct, intimate, and non-verbal process. It is the practice of bare attention, simply noticing what is here, without adding the second layer of commentary, judgment, or story. It is a gentle, curious, and open-hearted witnessing. If a difficult emotion like sadness arises, mindfulness doesn't say, "Oh no, sadness. I shouldn't be sad. I need to get rid of this." It simply notes, with a kind and spacious awareness, sadness is here, right now. This is what sadness feels like in my body. This simple shift from being consumed by our experience to being the compassionate witness of our experience is the beginning of all freedom. The classical teachings on right mindfulness provide a comprehensive training program for this awareness, organized into 4 distinct but interwoven areas of practice, known as the 4 foundations of mindfulness. These are 4 great training grounds where we can develop our capacity to be fully present. The first foundation is mindfulness of the body. We begin here because the body is always in the present moment. It cannot be anywhere else. We have already started this practice with the breath, the most subtle rhythm of the body. From there, we can expand our awareness to the entire physical form. As you sit, you can feel the points of contact between your body and the chair, the weight and solidity of your limbs, the feeling of the ground beneath your feet. When you walk, you can feel the complex, coordinated dance of your muscles and bones, the sensation of your feet touching and leaving the earth. This is not about thinking about walking. It is about being fully present for the raw, physical sensation of it. We can also practice mindfulness of the body through a body scan, slowly moving our attention from the tips of our toes to the crown of our head. Simply noticing whatever sensations are present: warmth, coolness, tingling, pressure, or perhaps no sensation at all, without judging them or wishing they were different. This practice anchors our awareness in tangible reality and begins to dissolve the deep-seated tension we carry from our mental stress. By bringing mindful attention into the body, we learn to inhabit our physical selves with a new sense of grace and ease. The second foundation is mindfulness of feelings, or more accurately, mindfulness of feeling tones. In the Buddhist understanding, feeling, vedana, is the raw, immediate quality of any experience, which is categorized into 3 simple tones: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This feeling tone arises in the instant before we layer on our complex emotional reactions and stories. A cool breeze on a hot day produces a pleasant feeling tone. The sound of a dental drill produces an unpleasant feeling tone. The sensation of your back against a chair as you listen to these words is likely a neutral feeling tone. Our entire life is a constant, unthinking reaction to these tones. We are addicted to chasing the pleasant, desperately trying to flee the unpleasant, and completely ignoring the vast majority of our life, which is neutral. The practice of mindfulness of feeling tones is revolutionary. It means learning to notice these raw tones arise and pass away without automatically reacting. When a pleasant feeling arises, we notice it, acknowledge its pleasure, and observe its impermanent nature without clinging to it. When an unpleasant feeling arises, we meet it with a steady, non-reactive awareness, allowing it to be there without adding the second arrow of mental resistance. We learn to stay with the raw energy of the unpleasantness, noticing how it too changes and dissolves. This practice strikes at the very root of craving and aversion, the engine of dukkha. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself, sometimes called mindfulness of consciousness. This is the practice of turning our awareness back upon the mind that is aware. It is learning to recognize the color, flavor, or state of our mind in any given moment, Just as we can recognize the weather outside, we can learn to recognize our inner weather. With mindfulness, we can simply note, the mind is currently caught in anger. Now, the mind is feeling spacious and peaceful. Now, there is greed present. Now, the mind is scattered and restless. Now, it is focused and clear. The liberating insight here is the recognition that these are all temporary, impersonal conditions. They are not us. We stop identifying with the state. Instead of thinking, I am an angry person, the thought becomes, there is a state of anger present in the mind right now. This simple shift creates a vast space of freedom. We are no longer the weather. We are the sky in which the weather happens. We see that even the most powerful states of mind are impermanent clouds passing through the vast open space of our awareness. The fourth and final foundation is mindfulness of dhammas, or mindfulness of mental objects, and the patterns of reality. This may sound abstract, but it is deeply practical. It is the practice of seeing the core principles of the teachings the Dhamma play out in real time within our own lived experience. A primary way to practice this is by observing the 5 hindrances, which are common patterns of unskillful energy that block our peace. When you feel a heavy dullness and sleepiness during your practice, you can mindfully note, this is the hindrance of sloth and torpor. When your mind is filled with obsessive desire for something, you can note, this is the hindrance of sensual desire. When you feel consumed by ill will, this is the hindrance of aversion. When you are jumpy and full of worry, this is restlessness. And when you are plagued by doubt and indecision, this is the hindrance of doubt. By simply naming and recognizing these patterns, we stop identifying with them. We see them for what they are: impersonal, energetic patterns, and in that seeing, they begin to lose their power over us. To see how all 4 foundations can be woven together in a simple, everyday activity, consider the practice of mindfully eating a single piece of fruit, like a raisin. You begin with mindfulness of the body, feeling the raisin in your hand, noticing its weight, its wrinkled texture. You observe it with your eyes, as if you have never seen one before. As you bring it to your mouth, you practice mindfulness of feelings, noticing any pleasant anticipation. As you chew slowly, you are aware of the burst of sweetness, another pleasant feeling. You are also aware of the physical sensations in your mouth. At the same time, you can practice mindfulness of the mind, noticing if the mind is impatient and wants to swallow quickly and move on to the next thing. You might notice thoughts or memories arising that are associated with raisins. Finally, you can practice mindfulness of dhammas, perhaps noticing the arising of the hindrance of desire as you reached for it, and the impermanence of the taste as it fades away. In this way, a mundane act is transformed into a rich and profound meditation, a full training in being present. Right mindfulness is the quality that illuminates our path, moment by moment. It is the steady hand that guides our effort, the clear-eyed witness that informs our speech, and the gentle heart that inspires our actions. When this light of mindfulness is cultivated with diligence and patience, its scattered rays begin to coalesce. The momentary flashes of presence become a more continuous and stable beam. This unwavering, collected awareness develops a new quality, a quality of stillness, unity, and penetrating power. This stable and unified mind is the final destination on our path, the culmination of all our efforts. It is the practice of right concentration. We have now journeyed through 7 of the 8 threads of the Noble Path, weaving together a life of wisdom, ethical integrity, and diligent, mindful effort. Each factor supports and deepens the others, creating a virtuous upward spiral. We have cleaned the lens of our perception with right view, purified our motives with right intention, guarded our words and deeds with the discipline of sila, and cultivated a balanced and joyful energy with right effort. At the heart of it all, we have practiced right mindfulness, the steady, compassionate light of awareness that illuminates our every step. The final factor on this path, right concentration or samma samadhi, is not so much another step to be taken as it is the beautiful, serene destination where the path naturally culminates. It is the fruit that grows organically from a tree that has been patiently and skillfully tended. In our culture, concentration often implies a state of tension, a forceful narrowing of focus, like a student cramming for an exam or an athlete straining for the finish line. This is not samadhi. The term samadhi translates more accurately as unification of mind or one-pointedness of awareness. It is a state of profound inner cohesion where the frantic, scattered energies of the mind finally gather together and become whole. The internal civil war between the restless monkey mind and the part of us that is trying to control it begins to subside. The sense of a separate doer struggling to achieve a result starts to dissolve, replaced by a seamless, unified, and luminous state of presence. This is not a tense state, but one imbued with deep tranquility, ease, and often a profound sense of joy. It is the mind finally coming home to rest in its own natural, undivided nature. This profound state of stillness does not arise by accident or by force. It is the direct and natural result of the dedicated practice of the previous 7 path factors. Right view and right intention provide the essential guidance system. They ensure our concentrated mind is aimed at liberation, not at selfish or unwholesome ends. The ethical practices of right speech, right action, and right livelihood are the indispensable foundation. A mind that is agitated by guilt, remorse, or the fear of being discovered is like a jar of water filled with mud that is constantly being shaken. It is simply impossible for such a mind to become clear and still. Ethical living is the gentle act of placing the jar on a steady surface and allowing the mud to slowly, naturally settle. Right effort provides the balanced, consistent energy that sustains the practice, preventing us from falling into either lazy, complacency, or stressful striving. And right mindfulness is the direct preparatory cause. Mindfulness is the moment-to-moment action of noticing when the mind has wandered and gently bringing it back. Concentration is the state that arises when the periods of wandering become shorter and less frequent, and the mind learns to abide, to rest contently on its object of attention without distraction. If mindfulness is the act of constantly aiming a flashlight beam, concentration is the steady, bright, unwavering beam itself. As the mind settles into this state of unification, it can enter into progressively deeper levels of absorption and tranquility, known in the tradition as the jhanas. These are not mystical, otherworldly states to be grasped at, but natural landscapes of the heart and mind that reveal themselves when the conditions are right. They are a sign that the mind is becoming purified of its usual hindrances. In the first of these states, the ordinary chattering of the mind, driven by desire and aversion, temporarily ceases. In its place, a sense of uplifting joy and happiness arises, a bliss born from this newfound seclusion from our usual mental turmoil. In the second state, this joyful energy deepens, and the last vestiges of analytical thought fall away. The mind becomes supremely confident and tranquil, unified in a state of pure, non-verbal concentration. As the practice deepens further into the third state, the more ecstatic quality of joy fades, replaced by a more serene, full-bodied, and unshakable contentment. A powerful sense of equanimity begins to pervade the awareness. Finally, in the fourth state, even this profound contentment is released, leading to a state of utter stillness and pure, bright equanimity, beyond the pull of pleasure or pain. The mind here is described as being perfectly balanced, pliant, and Luminausen, exquisitely sensitive instrument, ready for the deepest work of insight. It is vital to remember that these states are not the goal in and of themselves. Chasing after them is just another form of craving. They are simply beautiful and restorative resting places on the journey, and indicators of a mind that is becoming truly free. The ultimate purpose of developing such a powerful state of concentration is not simply to feel peaceful, as wonderful as that is. The true purpose of samadhi is to create an instrument capable of seeing reality with transformative clarity. The classic metaphor for this process is that of a lake. Our ordinary, untrained mind is like a lake on a windy day, its surface choppy and agitated by the winds of desire, anger, and worry. The bottom of the lake is stirred up, and the water is thick with swirling mud and sediment. In such a state, the water is opaque. We cannot see our own reflection clearly, nor can we see the rocks and treasures lying on the lakebed. The practice of ethical conduct and right effort is what allows the fierce winds to die down. The practice of right mindfulness is the gentle, patient process of allowing all the mud and sediment of our distracting thoughts to settle to the bottom. Samadhi is the resulting state of the lake. The wind has ceased, the mud has settled, and the water has become perfectly still, limpid, and crystal clear. In this state of perfect clarity, two things become possible. First, we can look at the surface and see a perfect, undistorted reflection of ourselves. We can see our own patterns, our habits, and our motivations with unerring honesty. Second, and more profoundly, our vision can now penetrate right through the surface, all the way to the very bottom of the lake. We can see the fundamental nature of reality itself. A concentrated mind is like a focused beam of light, a laser with the power to cut through the surface appearances of things and illuminate their true nature. It is with this powerful, stable, and clarified mind that we can now turn our attention to the great, liberating insights of the Buddhist path. We can see for ourselves, not as a theory, but as a direct, lived experience, the truth of impermanence, anicca, the truth of unsatisfactoriness, dukkha, and the profound truth of no self, anatta. Concentration forges the sword of wisdom. Mindfulness ensures the sword is sharp, and it is this sword that has the power to cut through the final bonds of ignorance that tie us to suffering. Our journey through the Eightfold Path has now come full circle, leading us from the initial flicker of right view to the brilliant, unwavering light of a mind made whole, a mind ready to awaken. With the mind now gathered, stilled, and sharpened through the dedicated practice of the complete Eightfold Path, we possess an instrument of extraordinary power and clarity. Like a scientist who has just perfected a revolutionary new telescope, we can now turn this instrument of the concentrated mind away from the surface distractions of the world and point it toward the deep space of our own inner universe. What we begin to see with this newfound clarity can be startling, but it is the beginning of all true liberation. The first great, unavoidable truth that comes into focus is the truth of anicca, or impermanence. This is not a new concept. We have touched upon it before, but seeing it with a mind stabilized by samadhi is the difference between reading a description of the ocean and plunging into its depths for the first time. On the surface, impermanence is an obvious fact of life that we all intellectually accept. We see the seasons change, from the first green shoots of spring to the stark stillness of winter. We witness the inexorable process of aging in our own bodies and in the faces of those we love. We know that all living things are born, grow old, and eventually die. We see empires rise and fall, technologies become obsolete, and even the mountains themselves slowly wear away to dust. We know that nothing lasts forever, and yet, on a deep, emotional, and often unconscious level, we live our entire lives in a state of organized rebellion against this fundamental law of the universe. We spend our days and nights frantically trying to secure, solidify, and hold on to things, as if we could somehow carve out a small, permanent island of safety in the midst of life's ever-flowing river. This deep-seated resistance to the nature of reality is one of the most profound sources of our dukkha, our stress and suffering. Let us look at how this war against impermanence plays out. When we experience something pleasant, a moment of perfect happiness, a loving embrace, a great personal success, the taste of a delicious meal, our mind's immediate, reflexive action is to cling. It says, "This is good. I want more of this. I want this to last forever." We try to possess the moment, to freeze it in time. We take photographs. We create nostalgic memories. We build our future hopes around recreating that past pleasure. But reality, in its relentless flow, does not cooperate. The vacation ends. The loved one leaves the room. The success becomes the new baseline, and the mind starts looking for the next achievement. The pleasant taste fades from the tongue. The friction between our desperate desire for permanence and the ceaseless flow of change creates a constant, low-grade anxiety. Even in our happiest moments, there can be a subtle, tragic undertone of fear. The fear that this, too, will end. The other side of this coin is our relationship with the unpleasant. When we experience pain, physical illness, emotional heartbreak, the sting of failure, a moment of intense anxiety, mind's immediate reaction is violent aversion. It says, "This is bad. I hate this. Get rid of it. I cannot bear this." We fight it. We suppress it. We distract ourselves from it. We do everything in our power to deny its existence. But this very resistance is like pouring fuel on a fire. It adds a thick, suffocating layer of mental anguish, the second arrow on top of the initial, unavoidable pain of the first arrow. We suffer not just from the pain, but from our frantic, exhausting war against the pain. Our refusal to accept the temporary nature of the unpleasant feeling is precisely what makes it feel so solid, so oppressive, and so unbearable. But when, with a calm and concentrated mind, we can stop fighting and simply observe, we discover that impermanence is not a cruel cosmic joke. It is, in fact, the very key to our liberation. When we are lost in the depths of sorrow, grief, or despair, the deep, embodied understanding of anicca is a lifeline. It is the unwavering inner knowledge that no storm lasts forever. No matter how dark the clouds, they are, by their very nature, passing through. The pain will subside. The grief will soften. The mood will shift. This is not a hopeful platitude. It is a law of nature. This certainty allows us to endure hardship with immense patience and grace. Without being completely shattered by it, we learn to ride the waves of life, knowing that even the most terrifying wave will eventually crest and dissolve back into the sea. Paradoxically, this same understanding transforms our relationship with joy. When we truly know, in our bones, that a beautiful moment is fleeting, we stop taking it for granted. We stop living in the future hope of its return, and instead dive into the direct experience of it, right here and now. We can appreciate the warmth of the sun on our skin with our full being, because we are not busy worrying about when it will go behind a cloud. We can fully receive the love of another, because we are not clinging to it with the fear of loss. The recognition of impermanence infuses every pleasant moment with a poignant sense of preciousness. We learn to hold our joys with an open hand, appreciating their beauty without trying to crush them in our grasp. There is a story that captures the heart of this transformative insight with unparalleled beauty and compassion. It is the story of a young woman named Kisa Gotami. Her first and only child had died, and she was driven mad by her grief. Refusing to accept his death, she clasped the small, cold body to her chest and wandered through her village, going from house to house, begging for medicine that could bring her son back to life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man took pity on her and sent her to the one person who might have an answer, the Buddha. She rushed to him, laid her son at his feet, and explained her quest. The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion and said, "There is only one medicine that can help you. I need you to go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed, but it must be from a house where no one, a child, a husband, a parent, or a servanthas ever died." Filled with a surge of hope, Kisa Gotami began her journey once more. At the first house, she asked for the mustard seed. "Of course," the woman of the house said, "we have plenty." But when Kisa Gotami added the Buddha's condition, the woman's face fell. "Oh, my dear," she said sadly, "the living in this house are few, but the dead are many. Do not remind me of my deepest grief." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family, rich or poor, had been visited by death. As the sun began to set, the truth slowly dawned on her, not as a harsh intellectual fact, but as a deep, communal sorrow. She realized her own pain was not a unique, personal tragedy that had set her apart from the world. It was the universal, inescapable experience of all humanity. In that moment, her frantic, desperate grief began to soften, contextualized by the shared river of loss that flows through every life. She finally understood. She took her son's body to the charnel ground, laid him gently to rest, and returned to the Buddha, her heart broken, but no longer shattered. She had seen the truth of Anicca, and in that seeing, her path to peace began. This insight is not something reserved for saints or ancient stories. We can cultivate this direct seeing of impermanence in our own formal practice. Using the stable platform of mindfulness, we can actively investigate the changing nature of our experience. Watch your breath. Notice how the in-breath is born. It lingers for a few moments, and then it dies, making way for the out-breath, which follows the exact same life cycle. Your breath is a constant, miniature lesson in birth and death, arising and passing away. Listen to the sounds around you. Notice how a sound appears in your field of awareness, unbidden, stays for a moment, and then vanishes completely, leaving no trace. Watch your own thoughts. See how they bubble up from nowhere, command your full attention, and then dissolve, replaced by the next one, in an endless, flowing stream. See your emotions as weather systems, powerful but temporary, moving through the vast sky of your awareness. The practice is to notice change, moment after moment, in every object of awareness, by seeing impermanence directly, not as a philosophy, but as the vibrating, dynamic texture of all reality. Our frantic clinging and resisting begin to soften. We develop a deep, flexible resilience. Our hearts become more tender, more open, and more appreciative of the precious, fleeting beauty of this life. But this profound insight naturally gives rise to an even deeper question. If everything we can possibly experience, our body, our feelings, our thoughts, our mutsis, in this constant state of flux, changing from moment to moment, then where is the solid, continuous I who is having these experiences? If life is a river, who or what is the unchanging self that is watching it flow? This question leads us to the very edge of our understanding of who we are and points us toward the next great, liberating insight of the path. Having witnessed the universal truth of impermanence, seeing how everything we can possibly perceive is in a constant state of flux, we are now brought face to face with the most intimate and challenging question on the spiritual path. Who then am I? If my body is changing, my feelings are changing, and my thoughts are a ceaseless parade of transient events, then where is the stable, continuous self that is experiencing all of this? We are taught to believe in this self as the core of our being, the permanent owner of our experiences, the CEO in the headquarters of our mind. The next great insight of the path, and perhaps the most uniquely liberating teaching of the Buddha, is a direct, compassionate, and radical challenge to this assumption. It is the teaching of anatta, often translated as no self. At first, this term can sound frightening, like a philosophy of annihilation or nihilism, but this is a misunderstanding. The teaching of anatta is not a denial of our existence. It is a profound re-evaluation of its nature. It is the key that unlocks the final door of the prison of the ego, leading not to nothingness, but to an immense and unshakable freedom. This is not a doctrine you are asked to believe, but an investigation you are invited to undertake for yourself. With the clear, stable light of your mindful attention, let us go in search of this self. Where can it be found? Let's start with the most obvious candidate, the body. Is my body me or mine? It certainly seems so. Yet, this body is in a constant process of transformation. It ages, it gets sick, it heals. The cells that compose it today are not the same cells that composed it 7 years ago. Furthermore, my body is made entirely of non-body elements. It is composed of the food I have eaten, the water I have drunk, the air I have breathed. It is a temporary assembly of elements borrowed from the earth, which will one day be returned to the earth. If I were to lose a limb in an accident, would I be less me of number? The body, then, is not a solid entity we are, but a dynamic, biological process that we have. It is a precious vehicle, but it is not the driver. So, perhaps the self is to be found in our feelings and emotions. Am I my happiness? Am I my sadness? Am I my anger? When we are in the grip of a powerful emotion, it certainly feels all-consuming, as if it is the totality of our being. But as we have seen, feelings are like the weather. They arise due to certain conditions. They dominate the sky of our mind for a while, and then they inevitably pass, replaced by a different weather pattern. If I truly am my anger, where do I go when a moment of joy arises? If I am my sadness, who is it that experiences a moment of peace? Feelings, we can see, are temporary events that pass through our awareness. They are visitors, not the owner of the house. They are not a stable self. Well then, surely the self must be our mind, our thoughts, our intellect. This is the deepest and most subtle identification. We believe, I think, therefore I am. We identify with our opinions, our memories, our plans, our personal narrative. But let us investigate this with the same mindful honesty. Can you control your thoughts? Can you? Right now, decide to stop thinking for the next 5 minutes, the answer for almost everyone is a clear no. Thoughts seem to have a life of their own. They arise, unbidden, from the depths of our consciousness. And if you can observe a thought, if you can be aware of the process of thinking, then who is the observer? The thought itself, or the spacious awareness in which the thought appears and disappears? This simple question reveals a profound gap. There is the thought, and there is the knowing of the thought. We are not the thought. We are the space in which thinking happens. The Buddhist analysis offers a new model, a more accurate description of what we call a person. It suggests that instead of a solid, single self, we are a dynamic, flowing process made up of 5 interconnected components, known as the 5 aggregates or skandhas. The first is form a physical body. The second is feeling the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral tones of experience. The third is perception, the mental faculty that recognizes, labels, and categorizes things: tree, car, insult. The fourth is mental formations. This is the vast category of all our other mental habits, including our intentions, biases, opinions, moods, and all the chatter of the monkey mind. The fifth is consciousness, the basic faculty of awareness itself, which arises when a sense organ makes contact with a sense object. The revolutionary insight is this: the self is not found within any one of these 5 aggregates, nor is there a separate self standing behind them, owning and controlling them. Self is simply the conventional name, the convenient label we apply to the dynamic, flowing, interdependent dance of these 5 processes. There is a brilliant dialogue from an ancient text that makes this clear with a simple, powerful analogy. A wise Buddhist sage named Nagasena was visited by a Greek king, Melinda, who was a brilliant debater and wanted to test the sage's wisdom. The king began by asking, "By what name are you known, venerable sir?" Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was just a designation, a name for a collection of parts, and that a permanent person could not be found. The king, a clever logician, scoffed at this. "If there is no person," he challenged, "then who is it that eats, sleeps, and wears these robes?" The king then pointed to his own magnificent chariot. "Just as this chariot is real, so is the person." Nagasena, with great skill, turned the analogy back on the king. "Your Majesty, you say you arrived by chariot. Please, explain to me what a chariot is. Is it the wheels?" "No," said the king. "Is it the axle, number? Is it the frame, the yoke, the reins?" With each question, the king was forced to answer no. Then, Nagasena concluded, "Is the chariot something other than its parts?" "No, venerable sir." Nagasena then delivered the final, clarifying insight. "Chariot, your Majesty, is simply the convenient name we give to the functional assembly of the wheels, the axle, the frame, and the rest. It is a conventional designation. In exactly the same way, Nagasena, or self, is the convenient designation we give to the dynamic assembly of the 5 aggregates. Look as you may, you will not find a permanent chariot owner or self separate from the ever-changing parts. Understanding this, not just as an idea, but as a felt reality, is profoundly liberating. So much of our suffering is born from defending, protecting, and trying to aggrandize this fictional, solid self. When someone insults us, it is the ego, this fixed sense of me, that feels wounded. But if we see the self as a fluid process, the insult has nothing solid to stick to. It's like trying to land a blow on a flowing river. The water simply yields and continues on its way. When we fail at a task, the pain is magnified by the story our ego tells. I am a failure. But if there is no fixed, solid I to be a failure, then there is simply the experience of an action not succeeding, an opportunity for learning, and the space to try again. The fear of death itself is rooted in the idea that a solid me will be annihilated. But if we are a process, a flowing river, then what we call death is simply a profound change in that process, a river flowing into the sea. This insight also fosters immense compassion. When we see ourselves not as solid, independent actors, but as a complex interplay of causes and conditions, we can see others in the same way. The person who acts out of anger is not an angry person. At their core, they are a flowing process in which the painful condition of anger is currently dominant. This seeing dissolves blame and replaces it with understanding and compassion. The teaching of anatta is not about becoming nothing. It is about realizing we are everything. We are not separate, isolated nouns, but interconnected verbs. We are not a thing, but a happening, a dancing of the universe. By letting go of the exhausting, lifelong project of defending a fragile, fictional self, we find the freedom to be flexible, to be spontaneous, and to be fearlessly, compassionately alive. With the ego's tight grip now loosened, we can look with even greater clarity at the subtle mechanics of suffering that operate within this selfless, flowing process, leading us to a final, deep examination of the thirst of tanha that has been driving the whole show from the beginning. Having journeyed to the center of our own being and discovered not a solid, fixed self, but a dynamic, selfless process, we are now equipped to understand our suffering on the deepest possible level. We have seen the symptom, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness of dukkha. We have examined the patient, the flowing, interdependent stream of the five aggregates. Now, with the clear, steady light of a concentrated mind, we return to the physician's original diagnosis. We turn our full attention to the pathogen itself, the precise, identifiable cause of our feverish discontent. This is the second noble truth revisited, the truth of tanha. This ancient Pali word, often translated as craving or desire, is better understood as a deep, primal thirst. It is the relentless, compulsive, and often unconscious force of wanting and not wanting that drives the monkey mind, that agitates the five aggregates, and that gives rise to the illusion of a needy, desperate self that must be satisfied. Tanha is the ghost in the machine, the restless engine that powers the entire cycle of suffering. This thirst is not a simple, monolithic force. It manifests in three distinct but interconnected ways, three faces of the same fundamental restlessness that defines our unawakened state. The first and most recognizable of these is the thirst for sensual pleasures, or kama tanha. This is the endless, forward-leaning chase for pleasant experiences through our six senses. It is the craving for delicious food, for beautiful music, for captivating entertainment, for sexual gratification, for physical comfort. In our modern world, this thirst is amplified 1,000-fold. It is the compulsive need to check our phones for the next notification, the next like, the next interesting article or funny video. It is the engine of consumerism, the deep-seated belief that the next purchase, the new car, the better phone, the fashionable clothes will finally deliver a lasting happiness. The problem is not with the pleasures themselves, which are a natural part of life. The problem lies in the thirst, the clinging, the mistaken belief that these fleeting experiences can quench a spiritual longing. This is the very mechanism of the hedonic treadmill. The pleasure arrives. It is real, but it is impermanent. As soon as it fades, the underlying thirst returns, often demanding a more intense or novel experience next time to achieve the same level of satisfaction. This is the very structure of addiction, and it keeps us in a perpetual state of searching, striving, and feeling that something is missing. The second face of this thirst is deeper, more subtle, and intimately tied to the ego. It is the thirst for becoming or existence, bhava tanha. Having seen that there is no solid, pre-existing self, we can now understand that the mind engages in a frantic, lifelong project to build, solidify, and defend one. This thirst is the deep, desperate need to be somebody. It is the craving for status, for reputation, for respect. It is the desire to be seen as intelligent, as successful, as attractive, as a good person, or even as a spiritual person. This is the driving force behind the "I'll be happy when" syndrome that plagues so many of us. I'll be at peace when I get the promotion, when I find the perfect partner, when I achieve my ideal weight, when my children are successful. We constantly postpone our well-being, making it conditional upon a future version of ourselves or our lives that we are trying to construct. This thirst is why we are so exquisitely sensitive to criticism and so hungry for praise. Praise feels like a confirmation of this constructed self, while criticism feels like a threat to its very existence. Bhava tanha is the exhausting and ultimately futile effort to turn a flowing river into a solid ice sculpture, a project that is doomed to fail in the face of the universal reality of impermanence. The third face of thirst is the shadow side of the second. It is the thirst for non-existence or annihilation, vibhava tanha. This is the energy of aversion, the desperate "get it away from me" reaction to anything unpleasant. On its most extreme level, it can be a desire for self-destruction, but in our daily lives, it is a constant, low-grade warfare against discomfort. When a painful emotion, like anxiety, shame, loneliness, or boredom arises, this thirst is the immediate, reflexive impulse to numb it, suppress it, or distract ourselves from it. This is the energy that sends us to the refrigerator when we are stressed, that keeps us binge-watching a show to avoid our own thoughts, or that drives us to obsessive busyness to outrun a feeling of emptiness. It is the energy behind our anger and hatred. Road rage is the thirst for the other driver to not exist in our path. Prejudice is the thirst for a whole group of people to be other than they are. It is crucial to see that this aversion is not the opposite of craving. It is the same compulsive energy, pointed in a different direction. Both clinging to pleasure and pushing away pain are forms of intense resistance to reality as it is. Both are expressions of the same fiery thirst, the thirst for things to be different than they are right now. We can see all three of these thirsts operating simultaneously in a simple, everyday act, like scrolling through a social media feed. We are driven by kama tanha, the thirst for sense pleasure, as we hunt for the next amusing video, striking image, or interesting headline. At the same time, we are driven by bhava tanha, the thirst for becoming, as we curate our own profile to present an idealized version of our life, checking compulsively for the likes and comments that validate our existence. And most pervasively, we are often driven by vibhava tanha, the thirst for annihilation, as we use the endless scroll as a powerful tool to escape or numb an unpleasant feeling in the present moment. The discomfort of boredom, the sting of loneliness, the pressure of a task we are avoiding. In one simple, habitual action, the entire mechanism of dukkha is at play. So how do we break this cycle? How do we heal this deep and ancient thirst? The answer lies in the power of mindfulness. For most of us, tanha operates on autopilot, below the level of conscious awareness. A feeling arises, and the reaction of craving or aversion is instantaneous. We are puppets on the strings of our own conditioning. Mindfulness is the practice that shines a bright, non-judgmental light on this process. It acts as a circuit breaker. With sustained mindfulness, we can learn to feel the thirst arising in the body as a raw, physical sensation, perhaps a tension in the chest, a clenching in the stomach, a forward-leaning energy, before it solidifies into a full-blown thought or action. In that precious, mindful pause, everything changes. We might feel the sting of loneliness, and then feel the arising of the thirst, the pull to grab our phone. But with mindfulness, we can simply note it. Loneliness is present. Craving is present. We don't have to act. We are no longer a puppet. In that moment of seeing, we have a choice. We can choose to simply be with the discomfort, to breathe into it with kindness, knowing that it, too, is impermanent. By investigating our experience with this level of precision, we see that it is tanha, this relentless, three-faced thirst, that is the true ghost in the machine of our apparently selfless existence. It is the force that takes the neutral, flowing processes of the five aggregates and weaves them into a painful story of a needy, wanting I. We have now seen the symptom, examined the patient, and identified the pathogen. We understand the what, the who, and the how of our own suffering. The next logical, necessary, and profoundly empowering step is to learn the art of applying the cure directly. It is time to learn the specific, practical, and liberating art of letting go. Having journeyed deep into the anatomy of our own suffering, we have identified the pathogen with microscopic precision. We have seen that the root of our disease is tanha's relentless, feverish thirst of craving and aversion that keeps the mind in a perpetual state of agitation and want. We have seen how this thirst operates on the selfless, flowing processes of our being, creating the painful illusion of a solid, needy self at war with reality. Now that we understand the mechanism of the illness, we can turn to the application of the cure. The direct, practical, and profoundly liberating antidote to the clenched fist of Tana is the open hand of Nekama, the art of letting go. In our culture, which glorifies striving, control, and achievement, the idea of letting go is often deeply misunderstood. It can sound like weakness, like giving up, like a passive surrender to fate, or a cold, detached indifference. But in the context of this path, letting go is the furthest thing from weakness. It is an act of supreme courage, wisdom, and strength. It is not about apathy. You can care deeply about a person or a cause while letting go of your need to control the outcome. It is not about passivity. You can act powerfully to create change in the world while letting go of the reactive anger that clouds your judgment. And most importantly, it is not about suppressing or denying our feelings. In fact, it is the exact opposite. True letting go is the practice of allowing our feelings and experiences to be exactly as they are, giving them the space to arise, be fully felt, and then naturally pass away without the desperate struggle of either clinging to them or pushing them away. It is the brave and graceful act of ceasing our war with reality. We can practice this art in every arena of our lives, but it is helpful to look at 4 key areas where our clinging causes the most suffering. The first is learning to let go of our attachment to outcomes. So much of our modern anxiety comes from a deep-seated need to control the future. We work on a project with a fixed idea of the praise it should receive. We enter a relationship with a detailed blueprint of how the other person should behave. We begin a spiritual practice with a deadline for when we should achieve enlightenment. In each case, we have chained our inner peace to an external result that is fundamentally beyond our control. Letting go, in this context, means learning to shift our focus from the destination to the journey. It is the wisdom of pouring our full energy and care into our actions, while releasing our white-knuckled grip on the fruits of those actions. We do our best, with a pure heart and a right intention, and then we allow the universe to handle the results. This is the source of a profound and unshakable equanimity. The second arena is learning to let go of our stories and opinions. We all carry a vast library of narratives that we believe define us and the world. We cling to stories about our past. I am a victim. I am a failure. I've always been unlucky. We cling to rigid opinions about politics, religion, and other people. We hold these stories and opinions not as interpretations, but as absolute truth, and we see them as integral parts of our identity. When someone challenges our opinion, it feels like they are challenging our very self. Letting go, here, is the practice of humility. It is the willingness to hold our own views more lightly, to recognize that our perspective is just one among billions, shaped by our unique and limited conditioning. It is the courage to release the old stories that no longer serve us. This includes the difficult but transformative work of forgiveness, which is, at its core, the act of letting go of the story of how we have been wronged, releasing ourselves from the prison of our own resentment. The third arena is learning to let go of time, itself letting go of the past and the future. We spend so much of our precious, present moment awareness carrying the heavy burdens of the past. We are haunted by regrets, replaying our mistakes over and over. We are weighed down by resentments, nursing old wounds, and keeping a meticulous record of past grievances. This is like trying to drive a car forward while looking only in the rearview mirror. Letting go of the past does not mean it didn't happen, nor does it mean condoning harmful actions. It means releasing the past's power to poison the present. It is the conscious decision to set down the heavy bags we have been carrying for so long. At the same time, we are constantly projecting ourselves into an imaginary future, a landscape of anxious what-ifs. Letting go of the future means releasing the need for certainty in an uncertain world. It is the recognition that we cannot control the next moment, but we can meet this moment with full awareness and an open heart. It is the practice of continually returning our awareness to the only time that is ever real, right now. The fourth and deepest arena is learning to let go of the self. This is the culmination of all the other practices of letting go. It is the moment-to-moment release of the exhausting project of trying to be a fixed, perfect, and impressive somebody. It is letting go of the need to be right, the need to be seen in a certain way, the need to defend our fragile ego. It is allowing ourselves to be what we truly are, a messy, beautiful, contradictory, and ever-changing process. This is the ultimate act of self-compassion, the permission to be imperfectly, gloriously human. To make this practice more tangible, we can use simple but powerful mental techniques. Try this right now. Bring to mind something you are clinging to, a worry about the future, a resentment from the past. Imagine you are holding it tightly in your fist. Feel the tension in your hand, your arm, your shoulder. This is the feeling of clinging. Now, very slowly, consciously, begin to unfurl your fingers. One by one, feel the release of tension. Let the object of your clinging now rest on your open, upturned palm. You are not pushing it away. you are simply ceasing to grasp it. Acknowledge it, be with it for a moment, and then, with an exhale, gently turn your palm over and let it fall away of its own accord. Feel the lightness that remains. Another powerful practice is to imagine yourself sitting peacefully by the bank of a gently flowing stream. As thoughts, feelings, or stories arise in your mind, imagine placing each one on a leaf and letting it drop into the water. Simply watch as the current carries the leaf and the thought it holds, gently downstream and out of sight, without judgment or resistance. There is a wise and ancient story that speaks to the active choice involved in this process. An elder is teaching his grandchild, saying, "Inside every person, a great fight is going on. It is a terrible fight between two wolves. One wolf is black. He is fear, anger, resentment, jealousy, greed, self-pity, and ego. The other wolf is white. He is joy, peace, love, hope, kindness, compassion, and faith." The grandchild thinks about this for a moment and then asks, "Grandfather, which wolf wins?" The old elder replies simply, "The one you feed." Letting go is the conscious and repeated decision to stop feeding the black wolf. We stop replaying the argument in our minds. We stop indulging in the story of our victimhood. We stop looking for new evidence to justify our resentment. We let the black wolf starve from lack of attention. And with the energy we save, we consciously turn and feed the white wolf. The art of letting go, then, is not a passive emptiness. It is a powerful, active, and compassionate redirection of our life's energy. It is the healing of the feverish thirst of tanha. It is the choice to align ourselves with the graceful, flowing nature of reality rather than perpetually fighting against it. This courageous act of releasing the negative, the painful, and the unnecessary does not leave a void. On the contrary, it creates a vast, fertile, and sunlit space in the garden of our mind. And into this newly cleared ground, we can now begin to consciously plant and cultivate seeds of extraordinary beauty, strength, and joy. This brings us to the radiant practice of nurturing the four sublime states of the heart, the Brahma Viharas, the journey of letting go, of ceasing our struggle with reality, does not leave behind a cold, empty void. Instead, it creates a vast, quiet, and wonderfully fertile space within the landscape of the heart. Having cleared the ground of the thorny weeds of craving, aversion, and resentment, we now arrive at one of an incredibly joyful and creative stage of the path. This is where we move from simply observing what is, to actively, intentionally cultivating what is most beautiful, noble, and healing within us. This is the practice of the Brahma Viharas, a Pali term that can be translated as the divine abodes, or the sublime attitudes. They are four specific qualities of the heart that, with patient cultivation, can become our natural dwelling place, the home to which our mind and spirit return. These four states, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, are the great positive emotions of an awakened heart. They are the direct, powerful antidotes to our most corrosive mental states, and together they form a complete and perfect system for emotional and spiritual maturity. These four qualities are not just a random list of virtues. They are a perfectly balanced and interconnected system, each supporting and refining the others. Loving kindness, or metta, and compassion, or karuna, are the warm, connective energies of the heart. They are the forces that lean towards others, that seek to offer happiness and alleviate suffering. Sympathetic joy, or mudita, is the radiant, celebratory energy that directly counters the poison of envy and jealousy, allowing us to participate in the happiness of others as if it were our own. And finally, equanimity, or upekkha, is the cool, spacious, and balancing quality of wisdom. It ensures that our loving kindness does not become selfish attachment, that our compassion does not lead to burnout, and that our joy is grounded in a stable peace that is not shaken by the inevitable ups and downs of life. If you imagine the heart as a sun, Metta is its unwavering, life-giving light. Karuna is its warmth that soothes the pain of the world. Mudita is the joy of seeing that light reflected brightly in others. And upekkha is the vast, silent, infinite space in which the sun shines, holding everything with perfect balance. Let us briefly introduce each of these four divine abodes. The first, and the foundation for the others, is loving kindness, metta. This is not the sentimental, possessive, or conditional love that is so often portrayed in our culture. Metta is an unconditional, gentle, and friendly wish for the well-being of all beings, without exception, beginning with ourselves. It is a quiet, steady warmth, a fundamental friendliness toward existence. Its direct opposite, its far enemy, is hatred or ill will, but it also has a near enemy, a quality that looks similar but is actually a corruption of it: selfish attachment. The love that says, "I love you because you make me feel good," is attachment. Metta says, "May you be happy," with no strings attached. The second quality is compassion, karuna. This is the heart's natural response to witnessing suffering. It is often described as the tremor of the heart when it is touched by pain. Importantly, karuna is not just a feeling. It is comprised of two parts: the sensitivity to suffering and the sincere wish for that suffering to come to an end. Its far enemy is cruelty, the desire to inflict harm. Its near enemy, however, is pity. Pity is a subtle form of aversion that creates distance. When we pity someone, we look down on them from a position of superiority. "Oh, you poor thing, I'm glad I'm not you." Compassion, in contrast, is based on a sense of equality and shared humanity. It says, "I recognize your pain because I know the nature of pain myself. We are in this together. May you be free from this suffering." It is the engine of all truly helpful action. The third quality, and one that can be a profound challenge in our competitive world, is sympathetic joy, or mudita. This is the practice of feeling genuine, unselfish happiness at the good fortune, success, and happiness of others. It is the direct antidote to the poison of jealousy and envy, which are rooted in the painful illusion that another person's success somehow diminishes our own. Mudita is the joyful recognition that happiness is not a limited resource. It is the ability to celebrate a friend's promotion, a partner's joy, or even a stranger's good luck with a whole and happy heart. Its far enemy is, of course, envy. Its near enemy is a kind of hypocritical or vicarious excitement that is actually self-referential. For example, being happy your friend won an award because it makes you look good by association. True mudita is a pure, selfless delight in the well-being of another. The fourth and final quality is equanimity, upekkha. This is the crowning glory of the four, the quality that brings them all into wise and effective balance. Equanimity is a deep, spacious, and unshakable peace in the face of the changing fortunes of life. It is the ability to remain centered and non-reactive when confronted with what are called the 8 worldly winds: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. Its far enemies are the very forces we have been examining, the frantic push and pull of craving and aversion. Its near enemy, and this is the most critical distinction, is indifference. Indifference is a cold, numb, I don't care attitude born of ignorance and emotional shutdown. Equanimity, on the other hand, is born of deep wisdom and profound caring. It is a warm, engaged, and loving presence that cares deeply about the world, but is not thrown into despair or reactive turmoil by it. It is the vast, peaceful heart that can hold all of life's joys and sorrows without being shattered. The cultivation of these four sublime states is a gradual and beautiful practice of expanding the circle of our own heart. Traditionally, the practice begins where it is often most difficult for us, with ourselves. We cannot offer a cool drink of water to a thirsty world from an empty well. Therefore, we must first learn to direct these qualities inward, to offer ourselves the same loving kindness, compassion, and forgiveness we would so readily offer to a dear friend. We repeat phrases silently, such as, "May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be safe, may I live with ease." Once we have established a foundation of self-compassion, we begin to radiate these wishes outward in ever-expanding circles. We extend them first to a benefactor or a cherished loved one, someone for whom it is easy to feel these positive states. Then, we stretch the muscle of the heart by directing them toward a neutral person, someone we see in daily life but have no strong feelings about, like a cashier at the store. The next, more challenging stage is to extend them to a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict. This is a transformative practice that can slowly dissolve resentment and replace it with understanding. And finally, we radiate these qualities out in all directions, north, south, east, and west, above and below too, all beings everywhere, without distinction, human and non-human, near and far, seen and unseen. This practice is not merely a sentimental exercise in positive thinking. It is a powerful form of mental and emotional rewiring. It actively strengthens the neural circuits in our brain, associated with empathy, happiness, and emotional regulation, while calming the primal centers of fear and anger. It is the systematic application of the beautiful, wholesome antidotes to the most painful poisons of the mind. Cultivating these four divine abodes is the ultimate expression of the insights of impermanence and no-self. When we truly understand that we are all interconnected, flowing processes, the rigid boundaries between my happiness and your happiness, between my suffering and your suffering, begin to dissolve. To wish for the well-being of another is to wish for the well-being of a part of ourselves. Having now mapped out this radiant inner garden, we will begin the work of tending to each of these divine plants individually. We will start with the one that is most essential when we are first confronted by the reality of dukkha in the world and in our own hearts. The profound, healing power of compassion, karuna. Having cleared the fertile ground of the heart by practicing the art of letting go, we now begin the joyful and life-affirming work of active cultivation. We will plant and nurture the four sublime states, the divine abodes of an awakened mind. We begin with karuna, or compassion, because it is the heart's most essential and courageous response to the first noble truth reality of suffering. To live is to encounter pain, both in the world around us and within the landscape of our own being. Compassion is the remarkable capacity of the human heart to turn towards this pain, not with fear, aversion, or despair, but with a quality of tender, unwavering, and active love. It is the quivering of the heart in the face of suffering, combined with the sincere and powerful wish, may you be free from this suffering. Karuna is not a sad or heavy quality. It is a source of immense strength and resilience. It is the courage to keep our hearts open in the places where they most want to close. It is crucial to distinguish true compassion from its near enemy, a more common emotion we often mistake for it: pity. Pity, on the surface, can look like caring, but it is rooted in fear and separation. When we pity someone, we look down on them from a position of perceived superiority. Our heart says, "Oh, you poor thing, I am so glad that I am not in your position." Pity creates a barrier between me, the helper, and you, the victim. It keeps suffering at a safe distance. Compassion, on the other hand, dismantles barriers. It is founded on a deep recognition of equality and our shared humanity. It arises from the wisdom that says, "I recognize this pain. I know the nature of suffering in my own heart, and therefore I can connect with the suffering in yours." It is the feeling of being with someone in their pain, not just feeling for them. Furthermore, compassion is different from simple empathy. Empathy is the ability to feel what another person is feeling. While essential, raw empathy can be overwhelming. If we are with someone who is drowning in despair, pure empathy can lead to us drowning alongside them, a state sometimes called empathic distress or burnout. Compassion is empathy balanced with wisdom and love. It allows us to feel the pain of another without becoming lost in it, enabling us to remain a calm, stable, and helpful presence. It is the perfect marriage of a soft heart and a strong back. For most of us living in the modern world, the most difficult person to offer this quality of compassion to is the person we see in the mirror each morning. We live with a relentless inner critic, a harsh, judgmental voice that constantly whispers that we are not good enough, not smart enough, not successful enough, not worthy of love. This inner critic is the primary archer of the second arrow, taking any small mistake or imperfection and turning it into a source of deep shame, anxiety, and self-loathing. We would never dream of speaking to a dear friend with the same cruelty we so often direct toward ourselves. The practice of self-compassion, therefore, is not a self-indulgent luxury. It is an essential medicine for healing the deepest wounds of the psyche. We can understand the practice of self-compassion through three core components. The first is self-kindness versus self-judgment. This is the simple but radical act of choosing to be warm and understanding toward ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than ignoring our pain or berating ourselves with criticism. The next time you make a mistake or are feeling overwhelmed, try this simple but powerful exercise. Pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, what would I say to my dearest friend if they were in this exact situation, feeling these exact feelings? You would likely offer them words of comfort, encouragement, and unconditional love. You would remind them of their strengths and their inherent goodness. The practice is to then consciously offer those same words and that same warm tone to yourself. The second component is recognizing our common humanity versus isolation. When we fail or experience profound suffering, our inner critic often tells us a story of isolation. Something is wrong with me. I am the only one who is this flawed. This feeling of separation is a core source of shame. Self-compassion is the practice of remembering that imperfection, struggle, and failure are not personal defects. They are a universal part of the human experience. To be human is to be vulnerable and imperfect. Just as Kisa Gotami's personal grief was healed when she saw it as part of the universal fabric of loss. Our own shame can be healed when we connect our personal struggles to the shared, common lot of all humanity. This transforms the experience from one of isolating shame to one of connecting empathy. We are not alone in this. The third component is mindfulness versus over-identification. As we have learned, mindfulness allows us to hold our painful experiences in a spacious, balanced awareness. Instead of being completely consumed and defined by our negative emotions, a state of over-identification, where we think, I am anxiety, or I am shame, we can mindfully acknowledge our feelings without being swept away by them. We can learn to say, I am experiencing a wave of anxiety right now, or a feeling of shame is present in my awareness. This mindful distance does not suppress the feeling. It creates the necessary space around it to allow us to respond with the kindness and wisdom of compassion, rather than reacting with fear and aversion. The active, fearless, and engaged nature of true compassion is beautifully illustrated in a story from the Buddha's life. He and his disciple Ananda came upon a monastery where a monk was gravely ill with a terrible disease, likely dysentery, and was covered in his own filth and painful sores. Because his illness was so foul, the other monks had completely neglected him, leaving him to suffer alone. Without hesitation, the Buddha instructed Ananda to fetch hot water. He then personally and gently began to wash the sick monk's body, cleaning his sores and tending to his needs. He changed the monk's soiled robes and bedding, settling him comfortably. Afterwards, he gathered the other monks and asked them why they had abandoned their brother. When they made their excuses, he spoke to them with a voice that was both gentle and firm. Monks, you have no mother and no father here to care for you. If you do not care for one another, who else will? Know this: whoever would tend to the sick and the infirm is, in truth, tending to me. This story reveals the essence of karuna. It does not turn away from suffering, no matter how unpleasant. It is practical, hands-on, and sees the Buddha nature, the inherent worthiness in every being, especially those who are in pain. And its deepest lesson applies to ourselves. We must learn to tend to our own sick parts, our fear, our shame, our despair with this same gentle, fearless, and hands-on care. This practice of compassion transforms our daily life. It turns simple listening into a healing art, where we offer our full, non-judgmental presence to another. It becomes the key to true forgiveness, allowing us to see the suffering and confusion that must have motivated another to cause harm, thereby releasing ourselves from the prison of resentment. And sometimes, it gives us the strength to set firm but kind boundaries, recognizing that enabling harmful behavior is not a compassionate act for anyone involved. Karuna is the heart's powerful, intelligent, and tender response to the inevitable reality of pain. It is the medicine that dissolves the illusion of separation and heals the wounds of our self-criticism. While compassion meets suffering with the profound wish for it to end, the awakened heart has another, equally powerful capacity: the ability to proactively generate and radiate happiness and well-being. Having learned to heal the pain, we now turn to the art of celebrating the joy. We move from the tender embrace of karuna to the radiant, benevolent smile of its sister quality, metta, or loving kindness. Having learned to meet the reality of pain with the open and tender heart of compassion, we now turn to its radiant and proactive counterpart. While karuna is the heart's response to suffering, metta, or loving kindness, is the heart's spontaneous, unconditional offering of well-being to the world. If compassion is the embrace that soothes a wound, loving kindness is the sunlight that encourages all things to grow. It is the second of the 4 divine abodes, a practice that systematically dismantles the walls of fear, anger, and indifference that we build around our hearts, allowing us to live in a state of warm, open, and fearless friendliness with all of existence. Metta is a love that has no agenda, no conditions, and no boundaries. It is a love that does not seek to possess or control, but only to wish well. It is the practice of cultivating an inner sun that shines its light equally on everyone, friend, stranger, and foe alike. Our evolutionary conditioning has endowed us with a powerful survival mechanism, a deep-seated suspicion of the other. For millennia, our ancestors' safety depended on a sharp distinction between us and them. This has left us with a default mental setting that is often one of mild apprehension, judgment, or indifference toward those outside our immediate circle. This subtle background radiation of fear and separation keeps our hearts in a state of slight contraction, always on guard. The practice of metta is a radical and intentional act of spiritual rewiring. It is a training that softens this defensive posture and replaces it with a default setting of warmth and goodwill. It systematically challenges our assumptions and biases, allowing us to see the shared humanity in every person we meet, recognizing that just like us, they too have a deep and fundamental wish to be happy and free from harm. The formal cultivation of this quality is known as metta bhavana, which means the development of loving kindness. It is a silent, meditative practice that uses the power of intention and repetition to transform our emotional landscape. The practice traditionally unfolds in 5 progressive stages, like ripples expanding outward from the center of a pond. The first stage, and the unshakable foundation for all that follows, is the offering of loving kindness to oneself. For many of us, this is the most difficult step. Our inner critic is so loud, and our feelings of unworthiness so deep, that offering ourselves kindness can feel fraudulent or selfish. We must overcome this resistance with gentle persistence, understanding that we cannot offer to the world what we do not possess ourselves. You cannot draw water from an empty well. So, we begin by finding a quiet posture and silently repeating phrases of well-wishing directed inward. These are not affirmations we are trying to force ourselves to believe, but seeds of intention we are planting in the soil of the heart. The phrases are simple. May I be safe. May I be healthy in body and mind. May I be happy and content. May I live with ease. As you repeat these phrases, you may not feel a great wave of love at first. The words may feel hollow or mechanical. This is perfectly normal. The instruction is to continue with gentle, patient repetition. The intention is what matters most. The feeling will follow in its own time, just as a garden will bloom with patient watering. Once a glimmer of this warm, friendly feeling for oneself has been established, we move to the second stage, extending metta to a benefactor or a dear friend. This is usually the easiest stage, as our hearts naturally feel warmth for those who have been kind to us or whom we love deeply. We bring to mind a clear image of this person, perhaps remembering a time they helped us or a quality we admire in them. We allow the feelings of gratitude and affection to arise naturally, and then we direct the phrases of well-wishing toward them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. We bask in the simple, uncomplicated joy of wishing someone well. This stage helps to amplify the feeling of metta, making it a tangible energy we can work with. The third stage begins to stretch the muscle of the heart. We bring to mind a neutral person, someone we see in our daily lives, but for whom we feel neither like nor dislike. It could be the cashier at the grocery store, the mail carrier, or a neighbor we barely know. We hold their image in our mind and recognize a simple, profound truth. Just like me, this person wants to be happy. Just like me, they have their own struggles, hopes, and fears. Based on this recognition of a shared humanity, we extend the same phrases of metta to them. This practice is a powerful antidote to the indifference we so often feel toward the strangers who populate our world. It begins to break down the artificial walls between our in-group and the rest of humanity, revealing a landscape of interconnectedness. The fourth stage is the most challenging and, in many ways, the most transformative. Here, we make the brave attempt to extend loving kindness toward a difficult person, someone who has hurt us, angered us, or with whom we have conflict. It is absolutely essential to approach this stage with wisdom and care. This is not about condoning harmful behavior, forcing forgiveness before we are ready, or pretending that what happened was okay. This practice is not for their benefit. It is for the liberation of our own heart. Holding on to anger, hatred, and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It only harms ourselves. To practice metta for a difficult person is an act of profound self-love. We might start by simply acknowledging their own suffering, recognizing that their harmful actions likely came from their own pain and confusion. And from that space of understanding, we can tentatively offer a simple wish. May you, too, be free from suffering. May you, too, find peace. This practice has the power to slowly dissolve the hardened knots of anger in our heart, freeing up immense emotional energy. Finally, in the fifth stage, we let the practice become boundless. Having cultivated metta for ourselves, a friend, a neutral person, and a difficult person, we now begin to radiate this feeling outward in all directions. We extend it to all beings in our city, our country, and throughout the world. We extend it to animals, to all creatures seen and unseen, in all realms of existence, north, south, east, west, above, and below. We allow the heart to open completely, bathing the entire universe in an unconditional, benevolent wish for all to be well, happy, and at peace. We rest in this state of boundless friendliness, free from all barriers and distinctions. The power of this practice is not merely sentimental, it is a tangible force. This is illustrated in the story of the Buddha and the raging elephant, Nalagiri, the Buddha's jealous cousin. In an attempt to assassinate him, arranged for a notoriously fierce elephant to be maddened with intoxicants and then released into the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. As the elephant charged, screaming and destroying everything in its path, the townspeople panicked and fled. The Buddha's loyal disciple, Ananda, tried to shield him with his own body, but the Buddha gently moved him aside. He stood perfectly still, facing the terrifying, oncoming beast. He did not prepare a weapon or a defense. Instead, he opened his heart and radiated a powerful, concentrated, and unwavering field of pure metta directly at the raging elephant. The story says that as the animal entered this palpable field of loving kindness, its furious charge began to slow. Its eyes softened. The madness drained away, replaced by a sense of calm. It approached the Buddha, no longer a weapon of destruction, but a humbled creature, and knelt before him. This story illustrates a profound truth. Metta is not a weak or passive state. It is one of the most powerful forces in the universe, with the capacity to pacify the raging elephants in the world, and more importantly, the rage, fear, and hatred within our own minds. Modern neuroscience is beginning to confirm what contemplative traditions have known for centuries. The regular practice of loving-kindness meditation has been shown to reduce activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear and threat detection center, while simultaneously strengthening activity in regions of the brain associated with positive emotions, empathy, and happiness. We can bring this transformative practice into our daily lives in small, simple ways. Silently wish well to the person ahead of you in the checkout line. Offer a mental, "May you be happy," to the frustrated driver in the car next to you. Before entering a difficult meeting, take a moment to cultivate a feeling of goodwill for everyone in the room. Each small act of intentional kindness strengthens the muscle of the heart and rewires our brain for peace. Metta is the heart's radiant smile, the active cultivation of our boundless capacity for love, while compassion, karuna, meets the world's suffering with a tender wish for it to end. Loving kindness, metta, proactively offers the world a wish for its happiness and flourishing. Yet, there is another sublime quality of the heart that allows us to complete this circle of goodwill. Having wished for another's happiness, how do we respond when they actually achieve it? This brings us to the direct antidote for the poison of envy and jealousy, the beautiful and often challenging practice of rejoicing in the good fortune of others, mudita, or sympathetic joy. Having cultivated the heart's capacity to meet pain with the tenderness of compassion, karuna, and to proactively wish for the well-being of all, with loving kindness, metta, we now arrive at the third of the four divine abodes. This is mudita, or sympathetic joy, and in our modern, competitive world, it is perhaps the most challenging, countercultural, and profoundly liberating of all the heart practices. If metta is the sincere wish, "May you be happy," then mudita is the genuine, wholehearted celebration when that wish comes true. It is the ability to rejoice in the happiness, success, and good fortune of others without any trace of envy or jealousy. It is the heart's pure, unselfish delight in the flourishing of another. While this may sound simple, the practice of mudita requires us to look directly at one of the most painful and deeply ingrained poisons of the mind, the habit of social comparison. Let us be honest with ourselves. How often do we hear of a friend's promotion, a colleague's success, or see a photo of a beautiful vacation online and feel a complicated pang in our own chest? That pang is a mixture of feelings. Perhaps a sense of being left behind, a feeling of personal lack, or a subtle resentment that life seems easier for others. This is the pain of envy. It is a state of self-inflicted suffering, a form of dukkha, rooted in the illusion of a separate self and the false belief in a scarcity of happiness. The scarcity mindset tells us that there is a limited pie of success, love, and joy in the world. If someone else gets a large slice, it must mean there is less available for us. From this painful perspective, another person's good fortune feels like a personal loss. Our modern world, particularly through the lens of social media, has become a powerful engine for this kind of suffering. We are constantly presented with carefully curated highlight reels of other people's lives, their greatest triumphs, their most beautiful moments, which we then unconsciously compare to the messy, unedited reality of our own. This endless cycle of compare and despair is a recipe for chronic dissatisfaction. Mudita is the radical and healing antidote to this poison. It is the courageous shift from a scarcity mindset to one of spiritual abundance. It is the profound recognition that happiness is not a limited resource. Happiness is infinite. The joy of another person does not diminish our own. In fact, If we can learn to connect with it, it can add to it. To practice mudita is to vastly expand our own potential for happiness. If we can only be happy when good things happen to us, our opportunities for joy are, by definition, limited. But if we can learn to feel genuine joy when good things happen to our friends, our family, our colleagues, and even strangers, then our world suddenly becomes filled with countless reasons to be happy. We are no longer isolated individuals, competing for a limited supply of well-being. We become participants in a vast, interconnected field of shared joy. The practice of mudita asks us to look for joy and to celebrate it wherever we find it. Like the other heart practices, we can cultivate it formally. We begin where it is easiest. Bring to mind someone you love dearly and unconditionally, perhaps a young child or a very close friend. Now, recall a specific moment when they were purely and incandescently happy. Perhaps it was a child's uninhibited laughter while playing, or the look of pure joy on a friend's face as they shared wonderful news. Instead of just remembering the event, try to connect with the feeling of joy you felt for them. Feel that warmth, that expansive, selfless delight in your own chest. This feeling is mudita. It is clean, bright, and has no agenda. Let yourself savor this feeling. This is the seed you want to cultivate. From there, you can begin to expand the circle. Think of an acquaintance or colleague who recently had a success. Initially, you may feel a flicker of envy. Acknowledge this feeling with mindfulness, without judgment. Envy is here. Then, consciously try to shift your perspective. Reflect on the hard work they likely put in. Reflect on their own deep human desire to be happy and successful, a desire you share. See them not as a rival, but as another person navigating this life, who has just experienced a moment of happiness. From this place of shared humanity, see if you can offer a genuine, silent, good for you, I am happy for you. Even if the feeling is faint at first, the conscious intention to practice mudita begins to weaken the automatic habit of envy. The most advanced practice, of course, is to try and cultivate mudita for someone you actively dislike or see as a rival. This is immensely challenging. It requires us to see with great wisdom that their success does not threaten us and that our resentment only harms ourselves. It is a profound act of letting go of the ego's need to be better than, to feel even a moment of genuine happiness for the success of an adversary is a monumental victory for the heart, a sign that we are becoming truly free from the prison of comparison. It is also vital to practice mudita for ourselves. Many of us are conditioned to be deeply uncomfortable with our own success or happiness. We dismiss our achievements, downplay our good fortune, or feel a sense of guilt as if we don't deserve it. Self-mudita is the practice of consciously acknowledging and celebrating our own moments of joy and success, without arrogance but with a simple, honest appreciation. It is allowing ourselves to feel good about our accomplishments and to savor our moments of happiness without apology. It is learning to be our own kind and supportive friend. Imagine a scenario with two close friends, both hoping for the same job promotion. One of them, let's call her Sarah, gets the job. The other friend, David, is initially hit with a sharp pang of disappointment. This is the first arrow, the unavoidable pain of not getting something you wanted. Now, David stands at a crossroads. He can choose the path of the second arrow, the path of envy. On this path, his mind starts to churn. It's not fair. She's always been the lucky one. I probably deserved it more. Maybe she did something to undermine me. He starts to avoid Sarah. When they do talk, there's a coldness in his voice. He is feeding the black wolf of envy, and in doing so, he not only poisons his own mind with bitterness, but also damages a precious friendship. But there is another path available to him, the path of mudita. On this path, David first mindfully acknowledges his own disappointment. He allows himself to feel the sting without judgment. This hurts. I feel disappointed. He gives himself compassion. Then, he makes a conscious choice. He remembers his deep friendship with Sarah. He remembers her talent and how hard she worked. He remembers his own wish for her to be happy, his own metta, and he makes the effort to connect with her happiness. He picks up the phone and says, with genuine warmth, "Sarah, I just heard the news. I am so incredibly happy for you. You deserve this completely. We have to celebrate." In this moment, David performs a profound act of alchemy. He transforms his own pain into shared joy. He not only saves his friendship, but he expands his own heart and participates in the abundance of happiness, rather than languishing in the poverty of envy. Mudita is the heart's joyful celebration, the direct expression of our interconnectedness. It is the understanding that your joy does not take away from mine. It adds to the sum total of light in the world. It is the cure for the sickness of comparison that keeps us feeling small and separate. We have now explored the three great warm qualities of the heart: loving, kindness, metta, the wish for all beings to be happy; compassion, karuna, the wish for all beings to be free from suffering; and sympathetic joy, mudita, the celebration of their happiness when it arrives. These practices open the heart wide, making it tender, loving, and deeply connected. But this very openness, if not properly balanced, can leave us vulnerable to bias, emotional exhaustion, or being overwhelmed by the world's joys and sorrows. To hold all of this boundless love and connection in a way that is sustainable and wise, we need the fourth and final divine abode. We need the great stabilizing force, the cooling shade of upekkha, or equanimity. We have now cultivated the three great, warm, and connective qualities of the heart. We have learned to meet suffering with the tender strength of compassion, karuna. We have learned to proactively generate goodwill and happiness for all with loving kindness, metta. And we have learned to celebrate the joy and success of others with the selfless delight of sympathetic joy, mudita. Our hearts, through this practice, have become open, loving, and deeply attuned to the world. But this very openness, this profound sensitivity, carries with it a potential vulnerability. An open heart, without wisdom, can be easily overwhelmed. Our love can become biased and turn into clinging attachment. Our compassion can become exhausting, leading to burnout. Our joy can become a giddy excitement that is easily shattered. To hold all of this immense love, empathy, and joy in a way that is both sustainable and truly liberating, we need the fourth and final divine abode. We need the great stabilizing force, the cooling and spacious quality of upekkha, or equanimity. It is absolutely essential to understand what equanimity is, and more importantly, what it is not. Its most common mistranslation, and its near enemy, is the state of indifference. Indifference is cold, withdrawn, and rooted in ignorance. It is a defense mechanism that says, "I don't care. This has nothing to do with me." It is a form of aversion, a subtle pushing away of life's messiness and pain. It is a closed and fearful heart. Upekkha is the polar opposite. It is born not of fear, but of profound wisdom and courage. It is not a state of not caring, but of caring so deeply and so wisely that one is no longer thrown off balance. It is a warm, engaged, and luminous presence that can hold the totality of life's experiences, the beautiful and the terrible, the joyful and the sorrowful in a vast, unshakable peace. If indifference is a stone wall built to keep life out, equanimity is the vast, open sky that allows all weather patterns, from the gentlest breeze to the most violent hurricane, to pass through without being harmed or changed by them. The primary training ground for equanimity is our daily encounter with what are known as the 8 worldly winds. These are the inevitable, universal pairs of opposites that constantly blow through our lives, threatening to push us off our center. They are gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, and fame and disrepute. Consider how the untrained mind reacts to these winds. When we experience gain-jetting, a promotion, winning some money, acquiring a new possession, the mind becomes inflated with excitement and immediately starts clinging, fearing its eventual loss. When we experience loss, the mind contracts in despair and aversion. When we experience the pleasure of good health or a delicious meal, we cling. When we experience the pain of sickness or an injury, we resist. When we receive praise and validation, our ego soars. When we are faced with blame or criticism, we crumble in shame or lash out in anger. When we achieve some measure of fame or a good reputation, we become anxious about maintaining it. When we are faced with disrepute, we are tormented by what others think. Our inner peace is entirely dependent on which way the wind is blowing, making us a leaf tossed about in a storm. Equanimity is the practice of finding the quiet, stable center in the midst of this storm. This stability does not come from willpower or from building thicker walls of denial. It comes from 2 deep, penetrating insights we have already cultivated on the path. The first is the direct seeing of impermanence, anicca. The wise heart knows that praise is just a fleeting sound, and blame is too. Gain and loss are temporary shifts in circumstance. Fame is a fickle illusion. Pleasure and pain are constantly changing sensations in the body and mind. By seeing the transient, insubstantial nature of these winds, we stop giving them so much power. We stop believing their promises of permanent happiness or their threats of permanent despair. We can appreciate the warmth of the sun of praise without believing it will shine forever, and we can endure the cold rain of blame without fearing we will drown in it. The second and most profound insight that gives rise to equanimity is a mature understanding of the law of karma, of cause and effect. We learn to see with clarity where our true responsibility lies. Our responsibility is for our own intentions and actions. We can choose to act with kindness, integrity, and wisdom in every moment. That is our domain. However, we are not in control of the outcomes of our actions, nor are we in control of the actions of others. Beings are the owners of their own karma. We can love our children with all our heart, but we cannot control their choices or shield them from all pain. We can offer our compassion and support to a friend, but we cannot force them to heal. Equanimity is this wise, loving acceptance of the limits of our control. It allows us to love more freely and powerfully, because our love is no longer burdened by the impossible demand that it fix everything. We do our best, and we let go of the rest, holding it all in a vast, compassionate space. There is a timeless Taoist story that perfectly captures the spirit of upekkha. An old farmer lived in a poor village. One day, his only horse ran away. His neighbors came to console him, saying, "Oh, what terrible luck." The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A week later, the horse returned, bringing with it a herd of 12 wild horses. The neighbors gathered again, this time to celebrate, exclaiming, "What wonderful luck." The farmer calmly replied, "Maybe." The next day, The farmer's son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came once more, shaking their heads. How awful. Such bad luck. The farmer looked at his son's injury and said, maybe. A few weeks later, the emperor's army marched through the village, conscripting every able-bodied young man for a war from which few would return. When they saw the farmer's son with his broken leg, they passed him by. The farmer's mindset is the very essence of equanimity. He is not indifferent. He cares deeply for his horse and his son, but he is not reactive. He refrains from labeling events as good or bad because he has the wisdom to see that he cannot possibly know the full story. He lives in a spacious present, accepting the flow of events without being swept away by them. This spacious, wise quality of upekkha is what brings the other three divine abodes into their perfect, mature expression. It is the great balancer. It keeps our loving kindness from becoming biased, preferential love, or turning into the anguish of attachment and grief. It keeps our compassion from becoming idiot compassion that enables harm, or from descending into the despair of burnout when faced with overwhelming suffering. It keeps our sympathetic joy from becoming a giddy, ungrounded excitement or an attachment to another's success. Equanimity is the parent who holds the hands of its three beautiful children, Metta, Karuna, and Muditainsuring. They walk through the world with grace, wisdom, and balance. To cultivate equanimity, we return to our mindfulness practice, observing the arising and passing of all phenomena, sights, sounds, thoughts, feelings, with a steady, non-judgmental awareness. We intentionally practice letting go of our stories of good and bad, and simply allow our experience to be what it is. We reflect on the vastness of time and space, which helps to put our small personal dramas into a larger perspective. Equanimity is the fruit of a mature practice, a heart that has been softened by love, strengthened by compassion, brightened by joy, and now stabilized by a profound and peaceful wisdom. Having cultivated these four sublime states, our inner toolkit is now remarkably complete. We have developed the inner resources to meet life with an open and resilient heart. The next step in our journey is to learn how to skillfully apply this integrated emotional intelligence when we are ambushed by the powerful, primal, and often destructive energies of our most difficult emotions. This brings us to the practical art of working directly with states like anger, fear, and jealousy. Having cultivated a heart of immense love and a mind of unshakable balance, we now turn our attention from the inner world of emotion and thought to the outer world of our daily environment. The wisdom of this path recognizes that our inner and outer worlds are not separate. They are reflections of one another. A cluttered, chaotic outer life often contributes to a cluttered, chaotic inner life. In our relentless pursuit of more possessions, more information, more stimulation, more speed, we have created a world that is profoundly, deafeningly loud. This constant noise, both audible and digital, keeps our nervous systems in a perpetual state of low-grade agitation, making true rest and deep peace feel like impossible luxuries. The radical and healing antidote to this modern malady is the intentional cultivation of its polar opposite, the twin sanctuaries of silence and simplicity. Let us first consider the power of silence. For many of us, true silence is frightening. We have become so accustomed to the constant companionship of noise, the television droning in the background, the podcast playing in our ears, the endless scroll of social media filling every spare moment, that when we are confronted with its absence, we don't know what to do. The silence can feel empty, awkward, or even threatening. This is because when the external noise finally stops, we are left alone with the internal noise, the ceaseless chatter of our own monkey mind. And for many, that is the one conversation they are most desperate to avoid. But the path of wisdom invites us to be courageous, to lean into this discomfort, the practice of intentionally seeking silence, turning off the radio in the car, choosing to walk in nature without headphones, or simply sitting in a quiet room for a few minutes is an act of profound self-respect. It is a declaration that we are willing to finally meet ourselves. At first, as the external world grows quiet, the inner world may indeed seem to get louder. The worries, the to-do lists, and the random thoughts will seem to clamor for our attention. This is a normal and necessary stage. But if we can sit through this initial restlessness, using the anchor of our breath and the gentle, non-judgmental awareness we have cultivated, something remarkable begins to happen. The inner noise, no longer fueled by external stimulation, begins to lose its energy. The muddy water of the mind starts to settle, and in the clarity that emerges from that stillness, we can begin to hear the quieter, more subtle voices that are usually drowned out, the voice of our intuition, the wisdom of our own heart, the deep, unspoken longings of our soul. True silence is not empty. It is incredibly full. It is the fertile ground from which all creativity, insight, and genuine connection are born. Hand in hand with silence walks its beautiful sister, simplicity. The dominant message of our culture is one of accumulation. More is better. Happiness, we are told, can be purchased. It lies in the next car, the bigger house, the latest gadget, the more fashionable wardrobe. We spend the best hours of our days and the best energy of our lives working to acquire these things, believing they will bring us contentment. The wisdom of Zen and the Buddhist path offers a revolutionary perspective. True happiness is not found in having more, but in needing less. This is not a philosophy of grim austerity, but one of elegant, liberating simplicity. Consider the hidden burden of our possessions. The things we own end up owning us. They demand our time, our energy, and our attention. We must work to earn the money to buy them. We must work to maintain, clean, and store them. We live with a subtle, background anxiety about them being lost, stolen, or broken. Our homes become cluttered, and that outer clutter is often reflected as an inner mental clutter. Simplicity is the practice of intentionally untangling ourselves from this burden. It is the mindful inquiry into what truly adds value to our lives, and the courageous willingness to let go of the rest. It is about freeing our resources, our time, our money, our precious mental energy from the service of material accumulation, and redirecting them toward what truly nourishes us, our well-being, our relationships, and our spiritual growth. Practicing simplicity can begin with small mindful acts. Before making a new purchase, we can pause and ask ourselves with honesty, do I truly need this? Or is this an attempt to soothe an inner feeling of lack? Will this object bring lasting peace and value to my life? Or will it simply become another thing to manage? The act of decluttering our physical space, our closets, our desks, our home can be a profound meditation in itself. As we hold each object, we can mindfully notice any feelings of attachment that arise. Each item we choose to release can be a powerful practice in the art of letting go, creating a sense of lightness and freedom in both our home and our mind. In our 21st century world, the most pressing need for simplicity and silence is in our relationship with technology. We live in an attention economy where our focus is the most valuable commodity. The digital platforms we use every day have been designed by some of the brightest minds in the world with one primary goal: to capture and hold as much of our attention for as long as possible. They often achieve this by skillfully triggering our most reactive emotions, our outrage, our envy, our fear, and our craving for validation. This keeps us in a state of agitated distraction, our minds splintered into 1,000 different directions. The practice of a digital detox is therefore an essential modern form of spiritual practice. This doesn't mean we must abandon technology altogether, but that we must become its master rather than its slave. We can create sacred times and spaces in our day that are free from screens, perhaps the first hour after waking, the time we spend eating our meals, or the sanctuary of our bedroom. We can consciously prune our digital gardens, unfollowing accounts that consistently make us feel anxious or inadequate. We can turn off all non-essential notifications, reclaiming our attention from the constant, reactive buzzing and beeping. We can choose to practice single tasking, bringing our full, undivided attention to one thing at a time, as an antidote to the frantic, shallow energy of multitasking. We can draw great inspiration for this from the lives of Zen monks in a monastery. Their world is a study in radical simplicity. A monk may have only a few possessions, a few sets of robes, a begging bowl, a razor. Their rooms are uncluttered, often containing little more than a mat for sleeping. This is not an embrace of poverty. It is an embrace of profound spiritual wealth. By minimizing external distractions, they create the optimal conditions for the cultivation of inner peace and insight. Their simple environment is a powerful support for their one great purpose: to awaken. While we may not choose to live such an austere life, we can learn from its spirit. We can see that deep contentment, clarity, and peace are not found in the endless pursuit of more, but in the liberation that comes from being content with enough. When we intentionally create more silence and simplicity in our lives, something beautiful begins to happen. We regain the ability to find profound joy and wonder in the ordinary moments of our existence. With a mind less cluttered by noise and desire, the simple act of drinking a cup of tea can become a rich and deeply satisfying meditation. We can feel the warmth of the cup in our hands, see the steam rising, smell the fragrant aroma, and savor each sip with our full, undivided attention. The way the afternoon sunlight falls across the floor, the sound of rain on the window, the genuine, unmediated presence of a loved one. These simple, readily available experiences become sources of immense pleasure and gratitude. We fall in love with our actual life, as it is, right here and now, rather than constantly yearning for a different, more exciting life that exists only in our imagination. Silence and simplicity are the pathways that lead us home to the present moment. They are the final preparations, creating the ideal inner and outer conditions for deep, healing rest. Having now explored the mind, the heart, and the conduct of our lives, we can gather all of these insights and apply them directly to the very problem that first set us upon this path: the simple, universal, and deeply human longing for a peaceful night's sleep. We have come full circle. Our journey together began with the image of a person lying awake in the quiet darkness of 3 a.m., a prisoner in the silent storm of their own mind. We have since traveled through the deepest landscapes of that mind. We have mapped its habits, and we have cultivated the tools of the heart needed to navigate its turbulent waters. Now, with the wisdom, compassion, and practical skills we have gathered, we return to that very bedroom, not as prisoners, but as liberators. We can now look at the painful experience of sleeplessness not as a personal failure or a biological malfunction, but as a profound spiritual invitation and urgent call from our own being to learn the forgotten arts of stillness, surrender, and letting go. From the lens of the wisdom we have cultivated, the diagnosis of a sleepless night becomes remarkably clear. It is not a random affliction. It is the direct and predictable result of specific causes. First, we see the momentum of the monkey mind. Our mind, having spent the entire day leaping frantically from task to task, from worry to worry, does not simply switch off when our head hits the pillow. It continues its frantic acrobatics, planning tomorrow's meetings, replaying today's conversations, and digging up yesterday's regrets. Second, we see the fiery energy of tanha, the thirst of craving and aversion. We lie there, desperately craving sleep, turning it into a goal to be achieved. I must fall asleep now, we command, creating an inner battle. Simultaneously, we have a powerful aversion to being awake, seeing it as a threat to our well-being and productivity. This struggle, this inner war against our present reality, floods our system with the stress hormones of adrenaline and cortisol, the very chemicals that are designed to prevent rest. And third, we see how this mental and emotional turmoil manifests in the body. The jaw is clenched, the shoulders are hunched up by the ears, the stomach is tight in a knot. The body is holding the physical pattern of anxiety, constantly sending signals of threat and danger to the nervous system, making the surrender of sleep impossible. To create the conditions for deep rest, we must therefore work with all three of these areas. Our practice begins not when we get into bed, but in the transition period between our busy day and the quiet of the night. We must consciously create a sanctuary, a gentle landing strip for the mind. This is an application of the wisdom of silence and simplicity. About an hour before you intend to sleep, begin to dim the lights. Turn off the bright, stimulating screens of your phone, your tablet, your television. The blue light from these devices is a direct signal to our brain that it is still daytime. Instead, engage in quiet, calming activities. Read a book of poetry or gentle wisdom. Listen to soft, instrumental music. Do some slow, mindful stretching, feeling your muscles release the day's tension. This gentle transition period sends a powerful message to your entire being. The time for doing is over. The time for being is beginning. As part of this evening sanctuary, we can introduce a powerful practice to shift the mind's emotional tone. Our minds, due to the negativity bias, will naturally gravitate toward the day's problems and failures. We must consciously and kindly guide it elsewhere. You might keep a simple gratitude journal and before bed, write down 3 specific things from your day for which you are genuinely grateful. It could be as simple as the warmth of the sun, a kind word from a colleague, or the taste of your evening meal. If you prefer not to write, you can simply do this as a mental reflection. This practice consciously counteracts the mind's tendency toward lack and worry, and steeps it in a feeling of abundance and peace. Following this, you can practice a completion ritual. Mentally review the day that has passed. Acknowledge what was accomplished and acknowledge what was left undone. Then, with a conscious intention, give yourself permission to set it all down. You can visualize placing the entire day in a box and gently closing the lid to be reopened only in the morning. This is a profound act of letting go of both the past and the future, allowing the mind to arrive fully in the present. Now, as you lie in bed, you can engage in one of the most effective practices for deep relaxation, the body scan meditation. The goal here is not to try to fall asleep, but simply to inhabit your body with a kind and gentle awareness. Get into your most comfortable sleeping position. Close your eyes and bring your attention first to the feeling of your breath, just for a few moments, anchoring yourself in the present. Then, guide your attention down to your feet. Bring a curious, friendly awareness to your toes. You don't need to change anything. Just notice what is there. Can you feel a sense of tingling, warmth, coolness, or pressure? Simply notice. Then, allow a wave of relaxation to flow into your feet, giving them permission to let go completely. Slowly, move your attention up to your ankles, your calves, your knees, your thighs, spending time with each body part, bringing this same quality of kind, non-judgmental awareness. As you do, you are not only relaxing the body, but you are giving the monkey mind a simple, tangible task, grounding it firmly in physical sensation and leaving little room for anxious thoughts to take hold. Continue this slow journey up through your pelvis, your stomach consciously letting it be soft, your chest, your back, your hands, and your arms. Pay special attention to the areas where we hold the most tension, your shoulders, allowing them to melt away from your ears, your neck, and especially your jaw, consciously letting it go slack. Finally, rest your awareness on your entire face, softening the muscles around your eyes and across your forehead. Then, for a few moments, feel your entire body as a single field of calm, heavy, relaxed sensation, breathing gently. Even with all this preparation, there will be nights when you wake up in the dark, your heart pounding with anxiety. This is where your practice becomes most crucial. The first and most important rule is this: do not struggle. The battle with wakefulness is a war you can never win, and the effort itself is the enemy of rest. Instead, practice a radical acceptance of the moment. Silently and kindly, acknowledge the reality: okay, I am awake right now. This simple act removes the second arrow of panic about being awake. Then, gently return to your anchor. Feel the sensation of your breath in the quiet stillness of the room. Notice the rise and fall of your chest. If your mind is too active for the breath, return to the body scan, feeling the weight of your blankets, the sensation of your hands. You can also practice metta for yourself. Silently repeat, "May I be peaceful, even in this wakefulness. May my body find the rest it needs." You are transforming a moment of torment into a moment of tender, compassionate practice. Ultimately, the deepest healing comes from reframing our entire relationship with sleep. Think of a great, wise tree. In the daytime, it is active. Its leaves are turned toward the sun, engaged in the complex work of photosynthesis, creating energy. But as night falls, the tree does not try to rest. It doesn't worry about whether it will get enough hours of darkness. It simply stops reaching. It enters a state of profound and total surrender, trusting its deep roots to continue drawing nourishment from the dark, silent earth, trusting that the dawn will come again. Sleep, for us, can be the same. It is not a task to be accomplished, but a natural grace to be surrendered to. It is the nightly practice of letting go of the daytime self, the doer, the thinker, the worrier, the controller. It is an act of profound trust in the restorative wisdom of our own being, allowing ourselves to dissolve into the nourishing darkness, knowing that we will be made whole again. The sleepless night that began our journey was a symptom of a mind at war with itself. By learning to tend to our hearts and minds with kindness and wisdom during the day, we naturally and effortlessly create the conditions for a deep, healing, and fearless peace to visit us at night. Our journey together began in the dark, in the quiet desperation of a sleepless night. It began with the painful recognition of a mind at war with itself, a heart weighed down by the relentless pressures of modern life. We started as prisoners of our own thoughts and anxieties. From that place of suffering, we embarked on a path of discovery, a journey inward guided by the timeless wisdom of the Zen tradition. We dared to look directly at our own disease, our dukkha, and found not a personal failing, but a universal human condition. We met the frantic acrobatics of the monkey mind, and instead of fighting it, we learned to offer it the simple, steady anchor of the breath. With that anchor in hand, we navigated the great river of the teachings. We followed the clear and practical map of the Eightfold Path, learning to clean the lens of our perception, to purify the intentions of our heart, and to walk through the world with an ethic of gentle, harmless compassion. We explored the sublime, radiant qualities of the heart, learning to meet pain with compassion, to generate happiness with loving kindness, to celebrate the joy of others, and to hold it all in the vast, unshakable peace of equanimity. We learned the subtle, courageous art of letting go, releasing our grip on outcomes, on stories, on the past and the future, and on the very idea of a fixed and solid self. We have seen that the prison was never locked from the outside. The bars were forged from our own clinging, and the key has been in our possession all along. If there is one essential truth to carry forward from our time together, let it be this: peace is not a destination you arrive at when all of your problems are solved. It is not the absence of storms, but the discovery of a deep, quiet anchor in the midst of the storm. Freedom is not found by manipulating the world into a shape that pleases you. It is found by transforming your relationship with your own mind. The happiness, rest, and emotional healing we seek are not external commodities to be acquired. They are the natural qualities of a mind that has learned to be still, a heart that has learned to be kind, and a spirit that has learned to let go. This path does not ask you to become someone other than who you are. It asks you to become more fully, more authentically, and more compassionately who you have been all along, beneath the noise and the confusion. It is not a distant superhuman goal, but a practice that unfolds in the small, ordinary moments of your life. The entire journey is contained in your very next breath. The choice to meet your present experience with awareness, the choice to offer a moment of kindness to yourself, the choice to let go of one anxious thought. This is the practice. This is the path. The key to the quiet room, the key to deep, healing rest, and a life of profound inner freedom has been in your pocket all along. All that is asked of you now is to gently, patiently, and compassionately learn how to turn it